Welcome. We are now in session. It is October 12, 2017. This is the Poway Unified School District's Board of Education regular meeting, and we are in session at 6:09. So sorry for the delay, everyone. Thanks for being here. At this time, I invite everyone to stand and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Item 3.1 is our report out of closed session. Dr. Patel.
Yes, good evening. Closed session began at 4:10 p.m. The Board of Education took the following action in closed session. 2.2a, nothing to report. 2.2a, nothing to report. 2.4a, in the matter of public employee employment on the motion by Beatty and a second by Sellers, the board ratified the appointment of Laura Vaca to the position of payroll director effective October 9th, 2017. The vote of the board was as follows, unanimous. (2.4b), nothing to report. 2.5a, on a motion by Sellers and a second by Zane, and by a roll call vote, the board voted unanimously to approve the compromise settlement of case number 37-20615-CU-OE-CTL with the terms as follows. A waiver of costs. Restore 2 days of paid compelling reasons leave to plaintiff. Pay the plaintiff's share of mediation costs, and consider a proposal to retain a third party to review policies and procedures relating to cyberbullying. 2.5b, nothing to report. 2.5c, nothing to report. 2.5d-1, in the matter of pending existing litigation, case number OAH 2017-070034, on a motion by Zane, second by Beatty, the board voted to approve settlement. The board vote was as follows, unanimous. 2.5-D-2, in the matter of pending existing litigation, case number 2017-031139, on a motion by Zane and a second by Beatty, the board voted to approve settlement. The vote of the board was as follows, unanimous. 2.5-D3, in the matter of pending existing litigation, case number 2017-050870, on a motion by Zane and a second by Beatty, the board voted to approve settlement. The vote of the board was as follows, unanimous. 2.5-D-4, in the matter of pending existing litigation, case number 2017-070693, on a motion by Zane and a second by Beatty, the board voted to approve settlement. The vote of the board was as follows, unanimous. 2.5-D-5, in the matter of pending existing litigation, case number SA1, on a motion by Zane and a second by Beatty, the board voted to approve settlement. The vote of the board was unanimous. 2.5-D6, in the matter of pending existing litigation, case number 2017-050212, on a motion by Zane, second by Beatty, the board voted to approve settlement. The vote of the board was unanimous. 2.5-D-7, in the matter of pending existing litigation, case number 2017-071104, on a motion by Zane, second by Beatty, the board voted to approve settlement. The vote of the board was unanimous. 2.6a, on a motion by Zane and a second by Patel, and by roll call vote, the board voted unanimously to reject claim number TC-17-36. 2.6b, on a motion by Zane and a second by Sellers, and by roll call vote, the board voted unanimously to approve the compromise settlement of claim number TC-15-24 in the amount of $317,500 and authorize the superintendent to execute the necessary agreements. 2.6c, nothing to report. 2.6d, in the matter of anticipated litigation, case number TC-17-45, on a motion by Beatty and a second by Sellers, the board voted to authorize litigation. The vote of the board was as follows, unanimous. And 2.6e, nothing to report. No other reportable action was taken during closed session, and closed session adjourned at 6 o'clock. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Dr. Patel. I don't ever want to be clerk. Item 3.2, I'd note that all members of the Board of Education are in attendance, including our student board member, Ms. Mishra. And that brings us to 3.3, our welcome to the public. Ms. Beatty.
Thank you. Welcome to the monthly meeting of the Board of Education. If you would like to address the board on any agenda item, please complete a speaker slip. All requests to speak must be submitted to the clerk of the board before the agenda item comes up. If you are requesting an agenda item be pulled for public discussion from Section 5.0 Consent Calendar, a speaker slip must be submitted to the clerk now, as approval of the consent calendar is one of the first items up for approval. Item 4.2 is placed on our agenda to enable members of our community to bring items that are not placed anywhere else on the agenda to the board's attention. Speaking time is limited to 3 minutes per speaker with a maximum of 15 minutes per topic unless waived by the board president. There will be a 30-second yellow warning light when time is running out. Speakers may only speak on one topic under item 4.2 and may not defer their speaking time to another individual. If there are any concerns regarding specific individuals, it is preferred that the speaker refrain from naming them publicly to respect their privacy. The board will accept and review any written materials that would provide more specific information. The Brown Act does not permit board action or extended discussion of any item not on the agenda, but your concerns will be referred to staff. With that said, welcome and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beatty. That takes us to item 3.4. This is the approval of our agenda and agenda sequence. This is a voting item. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
On a motion by Mr. Zane, second by Dr. Patel. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Fantastic. Moving right along. 4.1 takes us to our student board representatives. And I see two of you. As a reminder to the public, we've changed so that we're doing 3 students 1 month and 3 students the next month. So it is Poway High is missing tonight, but we've got RB High and Westview's reps. So let's start with Jalen Rasul from Rancho Bernardo High School. Welcome.
Good evening, Board of Education and community. My name is Jalen Rasul, and I'm the ASB president from Rancho Bernardo High School. We have a lot of things to be proud of. We had another successful Dancing with a Teacher show, where Mr. Trekker took the first place prize. Bronco Athletics recently coordinated a relief effort to benefit Memorial High School in Port Arthur, Texas, after Hurricane Harvey devastated their community. Over 4,200 was collected and used to purchase gift cards which were then sent to the school along with t-shirts and medical supplies earmarked for their athletic program. The RB Royal Regiment hosted their annual marching band tournament featuring 2,000 students from various high schools in the San Diego County. All 5 high schools from PowayUSD participated in this year's tournament. Homecoming was a blast, and the theme was Dancing Through the Decades. We had over 1,200 students attend, which is more than we have ever had at Rancho Bernardo High School. Yesterday, we had our PSAT day, where all sophomores took the test along with 300 juniors and 150 freshmen. The 9th and 11th graders who didn't take the test did college and career activities by using career cruising. Us seniors got to sleep in and come later. We also have a lot of things we're excited about and working on. Our art club is working on a tile mosaic mural to depict the wonderful RBHS experience. There's a choir concert tonight, a band concert next Thursday, and an improv the following Thursday. Mr. Lemaster has been hosting parent forums to collect feedback and input on the RB experience. The goal is to have a clear vision around what the RB experience should be for our students, staff, and parents. A group of students will be attending the No Place for Hate conference in November. Our Bronco ambassadors are visiting Shoal Creek, Highland Ranch, and Turtleback elementary schools at the end of this month. Thank you, and it's always great to be a Bronco.
I love your enthusiasm for that. That's fantastic. From Westview High School, see if you can match that, Nathan. This is Nathan Shaw. Welcome.
Hello, Poway Unified School District. Once again, it is a pleasure to report to you about the status and current climate of Westview High School. We started off this year by establishing strong leadership throughout our school and community. The Golden Leaders program has been established by our athletic director, Steve McLaughlin. This program works with leaders in our athletic departments as well as student section to ensure that the black and gold are being represented the right way through good sportsmanship, character, and conduct. We have also started up our Student Senate program where every homeroom sends one student to represent them in bi-weekly Student Senate meetings. Through this program, our student body has the opportunity to share ideas and opinions to help move culture forward on campus. Finally, to complete the circle of accomplishing campus unity, the program Westview United has been established. This initiative is composed of Westview's greatest collaborators and influencers who care to make a difference and move culture forward. These leaders unite together and form what is essentially Westview's version of the Avengers. Our performing arts department has been hard at work with our choirs bound for Broadway, and our Westview Theater program has been hard at work with their first production of the year, The Curious Savage. We look forward to all the other performances they are currently in pre-production for this year. A few weeks back, Westview ASB hosted its annual Westview's Got Talent, an evening showcasing student talent. We had many different acts such as singing, dancing, spoken word, and even roller skating. It was truly a phenomenal night that reminded students the talent that the campus had and what makes Westview so great. This week we are celebrating Homecoming 2017 themed The Odyssey of a Lifetime. The theme revolves around a fictional story that dates back to the 1960s space race era. The U.S. federal government is working with NASA to build a space shuttle in San Diego, California. To keep the project a secret, a public school was built over the launch site. That school, Westview High School. This past week, the space shuttle known as the Atlas was launched on the Apollo 21 mission. Throughout the week, our school worked together in anticipation for our astronauts to complete their mission to repair the PowayUSD Lightspeed satellite system in space. Some of you may have experienced issues with the PowayUSD wireless internet services. Speculation from tech professionals predict that this may be due to authenticity errors, but our aerodynamics team at Westview have discovered that it is actually due to the fact that the PowayUSD Lightspeed satellite is out of orbit and position, causing this issue. It is truly a devastating situation. This caused the need for our team to ascend to space and immediately resolve this major crisis. Flight control, also known as our student body, will be putting in their efforts collectively to get our astronauts home safely in time for the homecoming halftime show tomorrow night. At our homecoming dance, we always strive to ensure that every student has an activity that they can enjoy, whether it's a DJ, a photo booth, neon arcade, space tunnel, or karaoke. To celebrate homecoming this past week, Westview ASB had its very first Day of Innovation science exhibition, where different science clubs and teachers on campus performed various science experiments for our student body to observe in the plaza. Robots roamed the plaza, there were explosions from chemistry experiments, and students ran around checking out different science booths. It was like a Transformers movie. It is always a pleasure to have the opportunity to report to you about the black and gold. We'll continue forging on to move campus culture forward on campus and inspire our next generation to become change makers of this world. Thank you for listening.
I'm not sure whether to recommend that you try out for your next school play or enter a creative writing contest because that was fabulous. Thank you both so much. We're so happy to have you here today, but if you've got to go, we understand. Thanks a lot. That takes us to 4.2, and this is public comments. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Patel again.
We first have Kia Birdsong.
Do I press the button or does someone else? Great. Okay, thank you so much for having us. My name is Kia Birdsong. This is my business partner, Jennifer Thomas, and we are owners of a California educational nonprofit. It's called Subworks Pro, and we recruit substitute teachers for school districts, both certificated and classified. There is, according to the Learning Policy Institute, and of course, if you go to any site and talk to any principal, any teacher, any parent, any child, they will tell you there is, in fact, a substitute shortage, and it's greater than we know. And it's only predicted to get worse. Why is that? Schools, PUSD, all of them, have relied on something very traditional for the past 10 to 15 years, which is the people that come out of the teacher credentialing programs, but unfortunately that's gone down 70% in the past 10 years. So everyone's pulling from a pool that no longer exists. So how do you fix this? I think the problem is schools don't know because it's always been done this way, and it's time to change that. It's time to innovate. I see 2 young men who just left here who would be great substitute teachers, and I bet they don't know they can do it when they graduate college. You need a college degree. You can use your SAT scores or take the CBEST. I've taken the CBEST to see exactly what it's made of, so I know what I'm talking about. And you need a background check, TB test, that kind of thing. And I think of how many stay-at-home moms I know who were like me, who had a previous career, home with their kids. I was a prosecutor. I handled sexual assault, domestic violence cases. All the kids in those classrooms knew me. They liked me, but they knew don't mess with Miss Birdsong. So I had class management down to a science. And so nobody ever bothered to tell me, hey, you want a sub? Because I could have used the money. Okay, $120 a day, working when it's convenient for me, and if I'm sick or my kids are sick, I can stay home. So we just started thinking about this more, and hopefully another time we'll have more time to talk extensively to you about it. We realized nobody knows they can substitute. You can get brand new, eager, bright-eyed, articulate college graduates who may not be considering teaching as a career. Well, now you're collaterally solving another problem, which is your teacher shortage. And now you have people in a classroom going, it's not as bad as I think. And people, I'm a daughter and granddaughter of teachers, knows when you get someone in that classroom and they feel the bug, you've got a teacher for life. And now you get to groom them, they understand the culture, and you're getting a hire who's going to stay. So what we do is it's more grassroots effort. You can't just put up a billboard, you can't just do a general advertisement, because I'm just going to be plain spoken, that's when you get the cuckoos. We don't want the cuckoos. We want people who are going to sit in front of a classroom and they know how to follow a classroom plan. They follow the lesson plan. We train them on classroom management. We train them on how to work with a student who has an IEP. We teach them how to work with special education students that are in the classroom. We teach them basic Common Core.
I'm going to have to stop you, and I will now call Jennifer Thomas.
Up here. I'm the other half. I will continue where you left off. So my name is Jennifer Thomas, and I'm partners with Kia Birdsong. What she neglected to mention is that she's also a parent in this district, and she worked in 2 districts that are very close by. I currently work in those districts. I work for 5 North County school districts, and we have pulled the substitute rates from 70% up to 97% in about 6 months, and we've maintained it for the past 2.5 years. And I partnered with Kia because she is a mother in this district, noticing that the substitute coverage right next door is completely different than the coverage that's over in the districts I work for. So she and I have decided to take this and run with it and see who else what other districts we can partner with to make these efforts happen, because there's not a shortage of substitutes, there is a shortage of knowledge. Like Kia said, there's so many people that don't know this is an option for them. I have a background in marketing and PR, and when I graduated from San Diego State, I had no idea that I could be a substitute teacher either, and I could have used that while I was doing my internships. So there are many, many colleges and everything in this area, and we can pull people from those. Even if they don't have a degree, we can put them in classified positions and teach them on special education and work with those children that are in those classrooms in those situations. And we can also pull from bilingual classrooms and sit in on graduate classes and bring all sorts of different people into your classrooms. This will also put in front of your children what's out there. They can see children that look just like them that are in college, and they have degrees in bioscience. What's a design engineer? They can start learning about STEAM. You can have people who have backgrounds in STEAM or want to go into STEAM professions sit in these classrooms and teach these children, and then add that to their own resume that they've been teaching the profession that they're going to be going into when they finish their internships, or when the stay-at-home parents who used to own their own company, they can go in and speak to these children about what's it like to be in the profession that they're in. So Kia and I have reached out, and we have a background in law and marketing and public relations, and you guys are right next door, and we are in this community, and we're ready to jump in and help you guys out. And I have 45 seconds. Thank you. It's lovely to meet all of you, and I still get a little bit nervous public speaking, but
That 3 minutes is pressure.
it is okay. I don't know what to do with my last 30 seconds. You all have
You don't have to use it.
okay, but you have our brochures, and we're right down the street, and we're ready to meet and talk with you guys as soon as possible, whenever you're ready.
We teach them to do it themselves.
We teach substitutes to do.
No, we teach the school districts.
That's the other thing too. We don't want you to. We don't want you to rely on us for the next 25 years. This is not a lifetime commitment. This is us coming in, solving a problem, and creating the rules, and just keep following the rules. You guys will be able to fly free on your own. Ding.
Yes.
Next and last speaker is Dwayne, is it Bass?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Board of Education. My name is Dwayne Bass. I am representing CBPSUD, College-Bound Poway Unified School District. This is my first time speaking in front of a board, so I might be a little nervous, still hear a little jitter in my voice, but bear with me. My daughter's first year joining College Bound, and she's 14 years old, first year in high school. And I want to know, what are you guys implementing as far as we see what's going on around the country with the race? And we know that's a sensitive issue, an uncomfortable issue that's going around the country as far as race. And I wanted to know, how are you going to implement this in the Poway District schools as far as that goes? As far, I put on a card there, African American Studies. We know that the things that's going around, we want to educate, all races, especially non-color. And we want to know if we can implement these in the schools. When I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, that was implemented in high school when I went to Tucson High. I graduated in 1979. I just turned 57. And I just want to know, all races know that, we're not in this alone. We're in this together, even though it's always divided by our skin, but we are one. God created us as one. We bleed the same blood. So I just want to know, how can you implement this in the Poway District schools so all races will know that, we don't stereotype or we don't discriminate because of your color and whatnot. So I just want to know if this can be implemented in the school. I don't know how you go by and doing it, vote or what. But, growing up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, I experienced a lot, and, you see how it's just implemented to a whole different ramification of the way the world is turning now. It's the race is more prevalent than it was back then. Back then it was more hidden. Now it's more open, and we just want to make sure all races are aware of that. Thank you.
That was the final speaker.
Thank you very much, everyone. That takes us to 4.3, and this is our public hearing to establish trustee areas and elections by trustee areas. Shall I read this? Okay. All right. On August 10th, 2017, this board took action initiating the process of establishing 5 trustee areas within the district and changing the method of electing members of the board. Under the planned system, the voters in each of the 5 trustee areas will elect the board member from their own trustee area. This action of the board was to ensure full compliance with the California Voting Rights Act of 2001, also known as the CVRA, and was in response to a threat of litigation against the district alleging noncompliance with the CVRA. This is the time and place designated for our third public hearing for members of the public to have the opportunity to provide input regarding the content of the draft maps and the proposed sequence of elections. The proposed draft maps are available at the district office right here and on our district website, www.PowayUSD.com. The final hearing, final public hearing on draft maps will occur on Thursday, November 9th, 2017 at our regular board meeting right here, after which time the board will adopt a trustee area map for the district. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Phelps.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I'd like to reintroduce and invite Dr. Doug Johnson from National Demographics Corporation to the speaker's table. He's already there to share information in regards to our draft maps.
Okay.
Mr. Johnson, before you begin, I just would like a point of order on the maps. In my paper copy of the presentation, it shows maps 15 through 18 are included. Those were published after the statutory deadline, and so it's my understanding that we're prohibited from discussing those.
After the 7 days before today?
That's correct. Those were posted to the district website 3 days ago, and the public was never notified of their existence.
Sorry, I'm not remembering the exact dates of it. So the issue is if they weren't posted before today, you can't take action on them or adopt them or do anything today. But what we're looking for today isn't an adoption of a map. This is just the first of two hearings.
In the email to the public, it says, by law, the maps to be considered by the board at the public hearing must be posted online and available at the district 1 week before the hearing. Indeed, the statute election code 10,010 says the first version of the draft map shall be published at least 7 days before consideration at a hearing.
Sorry, I didn't check the dates of when everything is posted, but yes. So you can't take action on a map that wasn't posted 7 days before today.
So the last four maps that you submitted, we can't discuss tonight, just so you know.
Right, but they can come up at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Can I just quickly, before you start, I do not have a copy of this presentation. If we have an extra one, I'd love it.
And just so the board knows, I just got that to her about 4 hours ago, so that's my fault for them being late distributing them. My apologies. Okay, thank you very much. So we have a lot of maps. It's been wonderful to see the public engage with this process and jump into this. So tonight is our first take on this. As was mentioned, then there'll be a second hearing as well. So the board's not making any choice of a map or anything like that tonight. The superintendent went through the schedule. The one thing to add is after the board's, this is a unique issue in that, or fairly unique issue in that the board's decision isn't final. Once the board chooses a map, it then goes to the San Diego County Committee on School District Organization, which here is the county board, and they actually have the final vote on the map. Then, just as a reminder, just as you have, the trustee years will flow in with the school board's regular election schedule, with the first elections in 2018. Then the remaining trustee years will hold an election in 2020. And then, given the oddity of the time of the decade we're doing this, the lines will actually be redrawn in 2021 using the 2020 census data. So the guidelines, before we get into the details of the maps, I'll just cover briefly. The criteria are really in two sets. We have the requirements, the federal laws that say we have to have an equal number of people in each district, and it is total population. It's not registered voters or anything like that. And it's using the 2010 census counts. There is a little bit of flexibility, plus or minus 5%, allowed. Essentially, the difference between the largest and the smallest district can be no more than 10%. But that is a pretty strict rule. Then we have to comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act and be sure that where there's a protected class, we don't draw lines that dilute their voting strength. But at the same time, we can't go too far And race cannot be the predominant factor in how a map is drawn. It can be one consideration, but really we have to focus on neighborhoods, not on a census block by census block, just picking certain ethnic blocks and avoiding the others. So those are all requirements. Where the decisions really come down is under the traditional criteria. And this is where the public and ultimately the board are asked to choose the map that best balances these. These are not requirements, and you can't have a perfectly compact map. You can't have a bunch of circles, which would be the ultimate compactness. So we're looking to the board and public to figure out which of these maps best balances these options. And we're looking at communities of interest with the interesting question that comes up a lot in school board trustee areas of, is a attendance zone or whatever other community we're talking about best served by being united in one trustee area where it has the loudest possible voice in electing that one board member, but it only has one board member? Or is a given community better off having 2 or even 3 board members that answer to it on election day? And often in school districts, sometimes we go one way, sometimes we go the other, because often the concern is we don't want trustees to start feeling like they own a school. You know, decisions are still made by the 5-member board. It still takes 3 votes to do anything. And as you may have followed, some of the larger districts to the south have had issues with this in the past. So often we will get communities, especially in school district projects, they say, here's our community, we want 2 board members or 3 board members. So that's the question out there for the public when they talk about their community. Do they want to be united, or do they want multiple board members to answer to them? I'll go quicker through the others. We want to be compact, contiguous, and follow major roads. That's so it's easier for the voters to understand which trustee area they're in. When they want to go out and knock on doors for a candidate they like, we want to make it easy for them to figure out which doors to knock on. And then the last criteria that we're looking at this time around is respecting the voters' wishes. This is really what the courts have said is it's okay to look at where the current board members live in an effort to make sure it's up to the voters to decide which board members are reelected. And to do that, you have to keep the board members in separate trustee areas. Otherwise, you're telling the public you can only have one of these 2. Now, I should note that is on the goals side. It's not on the requirement side. So it is a legitimate consideration, but it's not a requirement. And as you may have noticed, most of the maps before you actually pair multiple board members. And then I mentioned planned future growth, just so no one's surprised in 2021. Given that these lines will only be used for one election, we're not really looking at much future growth. But in 2021, it'll be much more of a consideration since those lines will be in place for 10 years. So, quick background. We haven't been able to get these digitized yet and into an overlay on the map, so I did want to include your attendance zone maps because that is obviously consideration. They're hard to read, I realize that. These are actually taken from your website. The big thing I would note is that given that this is a large school district and you only have 5 board members, it's almost impossible to have elementary school attendance zones with multiple board members. It would just be too crazy. So more often when we're looking at that, you're going to have elementary schools largely united in one trustee area. And then when we're looking at multiple board members per area, it's more possible at the middle school level. It's certainly possible at the high school level. So starting out, I did want to include all the maps. I mentioned the requirement that the maps must be equal in population balance, and we had 3 that were submitted that were not, 103, 104, and 110. I did want to include them to acknowledge that people took the time to draw them, and they do reflect those people's goals, even though they're not quite balanced. 103 and 104 are actually close. They're off by their 15% deviation and 18% deviation instead of 10. So they're not that far off, and you'll see some of the maps are certainly like 104. 103 is kind of a unique map. And if the board wanted to come back to this, we could come back and make adjustments to that map to make it population balanced. And we could certainly do that for the person. 110 is farther off. It's off by 30%. So that would take more extensive line drawing. And actually, there are maps like 110 that are population balanced later in the presentation. So I did want to acknowledge that they had been submitted and show them, even though they're not maps that the board could adopt ultimately. When we try to group maps, especially when we have 18 maps, we try to group them so that people can think about them in categories and compare the categories. So when we went through the maps, what really stands out is driving the makeup of each map is where does trustee area C end up? that wherever that goes kind of dictates the rest of the lines. So we have one group, it's actually 2 slides because there's so many maps that are like this, that has essentially a central area C running along the freeway. And then you kind of get when that's there, it almost forces a northwestern, a southwestern, a northeastern, and a southeastern seat around it. As you can see in these maps, roughly similar borders, but definitely some different choices in exactly where those lines go. And this is a good chance, too, to point out there's this interactive map. So on the website are PDF maps. There's also a link for people who didn't notice it. I highly recommend you use this link. This interactive map lets you choose which map you want to look at, and it lets you zoom in and out, essentially like Google Maps or anything like that. So if you want to see exactly where the lines go, you can zoom it way in. And then there's an information sheet screen that pops up when you first go to the website. If you click on these little down arrows, you can even switch to satellite view and zoom in and out. And you can type in an address, and it will zoom right to the address. So especially in a large area like this district, an 8.5 by 11 map is not going to show much detail. But if you want to go down to the individual house, you can do that here in this map. And for the discussion, if the board or members of the public want to see details, we can certainly zoom in on those maps. So happy to do that. So as far as a central area C, you get 101, 102, 105. These are pretty close. You can see kind of the southern part of C varies between the different maps, how far down it comes, what population it picks up, and then the areas around it are impacted. Similarly, we have 108, 112, 114, and 116. Same kind of idea. You can see different makeups of C, but it's generally in the middle in each one of them. One of the things that we're suggesting is that the board, if it's comfortable doing that tonight, pick a few focus maps. And what we usually do in that approach is pick 1 or 2 from each group so that we're not ruling out any approach unless you want to. But that helps the public focus their comments when they only have 3 minutes or whatever, especially at the next meeting, to come back. It helps them focus on just the maps that the board is most seriously considering. So to help that along, we're suggesting some maps. And actually you're right, actually to your point earlier, we should not be taking action to include or exclude those 4 that were posted later. So I'll modify this as I go along a little bit. But from this group, our suggestion would be 112 out of this group, but I would emphasize that you're welcome to change the preference if you wish. When we did this in El Cajon, we actually had 30 maps in the city of El Cajon, and when we came in suggesting our 5, the council actually switched out 3 of them based on the public input that they'd heard at that hearing and their own opinions, which we're perfectly happy with. But at least just to get the discussion going, we're suggesting 112. And then the 4 maps that came in late we'll include in the next hearing so that you can review those as well. You don't need to include them now. So the second group is maps that put that area C up to the north. So what that ends up giving you in most of them is, as you can see in 106 and 109, is really 2 southern trustee areas, D and E, that come together at about the freeway. There are other ways to do it. You can see 111 is a fairly unique map where they actually get 4 vertical maps, or 4 vertical trustee areas in there. C is up north, picking up that extra population in the north, and then the rest of the school district is divided vertically. 117, again, is another approach that we'll get more focused on next time. 107, you can see, has a northern central seat, but it keeps it completely to the east of the freeway. And so hopefully as your audience and you are looking at this, especially for the members of the public, to think about their neighborhood and who they work with and who they talk with when they're getting involved in school issues, and how do they want to keep that area together? How do they keep that group of parents together and get them the most organized approach? It's a lot of maps and a lot of details to take in. So that's one thing I encourage the public to do, is focus on their area and where it would make sense when they're going out and knocking on doors on campaign day, and how many districts they want to be able to knock on doors for. So out of this group, again, you can pick any of these that you wish, but 111 would probably be our suggestion. It's an interesting map that comes with lots of possibilities, and it is good on all the criteria. The last two groups, one of them, 115, again, we'll leave for the next time, but it's a unique map. It's kind of like 111, I guess, in some ways, but it struck us as being its own little group. 113 and 118 are a different approach. Area C moves down to the south, and then you get, in 113, a big northern area A, and in 118, you get two northern trustee areas. And our suggestion would be to go with 113 out of those two. I should note, we've been getting emails, as I'm sure you have. I'm sure you've been hearing from the community on this. I went through and tallied just what maps people liked and disliked, and a lot of the emails are, this is my favorite, these would be okay. And then some of them mention maps they really don't like. Some people, I should note, have been counted more than once because they mentioned more than one map. But there's a lot of spread of these opinions. It varies from 0 to 3 comments liking a given map is the best map, and then same thing on the okay goods, we have a handful. And then on the dislikes, I think we only had 2 people that actually listed which maps they disliked, but they were shared their opinions about many maps each. So you can see there's clearly no community consensus around one map. This may change in your hearing, but you have lots of input coming in about people liking different maps and different approaches. So for the public hearing, as was noted, we're looking to get input, and what the law requires is getting input on the maps. There also is a listing posted about election sequencing, which would be which trustee areas are up at which points. That's on the website. We're happy to talk about it. Given this many maps, that can really take the discussion in a side tangent. It's much more useful to discuss the election sequencing when we're down to just a couple of maps, in part because that's largely dictated by law. There's not a lot of discretionary choice. And then the other thing to emphasize is it's not too late to come up with new maps. So if people really like a map, but there's something very wrong with it, they can talk about that, and the board can ask for that map to be revised if you're interested in seeing a revised version of that for the next meeting. And then I've got a couple of reference slides, just the suggested focus maps. Again, as was mentioned, we should leave 116 out at this point. Sorry, this is my 6th board or council meeting this week, so my apologies for not checking all the details, and I appreciate you checking that. And then this slide, if people wanted to be able to look at all the maps when they're commenting, I'm happy to put this up, even though you can't see a lot of detail. So that's my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you have now or after the public hearing.
Well, according to my timeline here, we're going to go to public speakers first and then come back to the board on this. So thank you very much, Dr. Johnson, for your presentation. At this time, public speakers are going to be allotted 3 minutes to provide input, and I will open the public hearing now at 6:52. Dr. Patel, please call our first speaker.
Our first speaker is Darlene Dunn.
Hello, PUSD, Administration and School Board. My name is Darlene Dunn. I live at 11686 Calle Paracho, San Diego, California. I currently serve as the PTA President at Rancho Bernardo High School. I'm a member of the Coalition for Effective School Board. I'm also the proud mother of 6 wonderful children, 5 of whom have already graduated from Rancho Bernardo High School, and my youngest is currently a junior. Our family moved to RB in 1993, over 23 years ago, and I've spent an incredible amount of time in our schools in various capacities. And in one of those years, I was even honored as a PUSD Volunteer of the Year. I could honestly say I know well and appreciate our schools. I'm a vested stakeholder. I'm here to speak about the district mapping. I submitted an idea on September 25th. It was simple, understandable, and fair. I almost didn't submit the idea thinking it was the most basic starting point. My proposal was and still is to make the trustee boundaries align with high school boundaries so that each high school and schools that feed into the high school will have at least one guaranteed board representative. I expected to see or at least one map following the general high school boundaries and modify it from there. But no, not even one of the unbalanced population proposals included the basic concept. Now, after reviewing all the proposed maps, I have serious concerns about the intended direction. Not only because of the most basic proposals not included, but several of these maps make me and others at RB wonder exactly where the 5 current board members live. Setting this obvious concern aside, let's test if the claim is sincere that these are the first drafts, not necessarily the final maps, and future versions can include revisions aimed at addressing the concerns raised by stakeholders by refocusing on the merits of my proposal. For all the families who have moved to certain areas with high school boundaries in mind, these 5 voting districts seem pretty basic. There are 5 school board members and 5 high schools. When creating the high school boundaries, PUSD must have carefully formed them using numbers that ensured some equality among student population and most likely basic census data of families. To restate my proposal, let's first use your own formula and use something close to the high school boundaries, understanding some minor adjustments to match voting precinct boundaries. This will ensure that gerrymandering, outside influence, and other manipulation in the future is prevented. Each will be represented, ensuring equality, forward-thinking within the school district. Most importantly, I propose to have each school member be a liaison for another boundary area. This assignment can rotate quarterly. Being a liaison will encourage each board member to have an appreciation for the entire school district, so each board member doesn't become self-serving, promoting only their area. Instead, collaborate together. This would prevent divisiveness and also unify our district.
Thank you. Next is Deborah Cooper.
Hi, guys. Good evening, trustees and superintendent's cabinet. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. I'm Deborah Cooper, and so many of you already know me as a vested stakeholder, parent of 2 children, and former trustee candidate. I really appreciated as you were presenting your presentation about trying to figure out how to chunk off 18 maps and take a look at them and what do you know and what don't you know. So you guys approached it from a where does District C fall and start to look at how everything fell out from there. I took it from a different perspective, is what can I find out? What do I know about these maps? And what I found is that a lot of them have a lot of overlap with the trustees themselves. So that's one of the components that was talked about among the criteria to consider, is that continuity of service. And 1/3 of them take 4 of the trustees and put them into one district. Well over half of them put at least 3 trustees into one district. That's something to seriously consider when you're looking at that continuity of service. And I understand that 3 of you will be up for re-election again, but I think that that's really one of the components that you can hang your hat in your discussions on. You can wrap yourselves around is there's lots of ways to draw the demographics, but one of the things to consider and really quite frankly be sort of honest about is how does it impact the sitting trustees or future plans for running. So my proposal would be that you look at, you take one of the maps from each of those groups. You take one of the ones that puts 4 trustees into one district, and you say, this is the best demographically, and where do we go from here? What does that mean to the district? You take one that I like to call it the Hunger Games map. It puts the 3 of you that are up in 2018 into the same district. You take that one, and you throw it into the pile, and you say, how does that impact the future of the district? Is that best for our population? You take one of the 2 that puts put you each in your own district and say, what does that do? Is that too gerrymandered? Is that too spread out? Is that serve its purposes? And then I sort of really like Darlene's idea, which we don't see, and I understand why it's not there right now, but the following the high school. So that's just kind of a framework for trying to wade through 18 really cumbersome maps. But that was my perspective as I was looking at it. And thank you for your time this evening. 14 seconds left.
Next is Lisa Mercero.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Mercero. I have two middle schoolers in Poway Unified, one in special ed at Mesa Verde and the other is in the academy at Black Mountain. We've been in a lot of different schools throughout the district, and we love the district. We love the services and the education that our children are being provided. I just had a couple of quick points about what I think about the map selection and what I think you should consider for the map that you ultimately select. I think the map should include board members that represent every school. This is to ensure we have advocates for each and every school. I don't think it's right if a new map is selected, which would necessitate a re-election. I think when we, the voters, voted and selected the board members, we spoke, and it's the voters who selected the boards, not a map. The map you select should not require board members to have to resign. It's kind of along the same lines. And the ultimate goal should be the stability of our selected board members. And that's all I have. Thank you very much for your time.
The next speaker is Jill. There's no last name.
Good evening, PUSD board and administrators. My name is Jill Episcopio, and I am a PTA president in the district. I have a middle schooler and two elementary students, so I do have a vested interest in how this progresses. I think one of my concerns is that mapping out the district and dividing it, I'm concerned that the board is going to become territorial, and I think that's one thing that was mentioned. And really, I don't want this to divide the board as they vote on things and discuss things. So I think it would be nice if there could be some overlapping in some way. I know there's 5 high schools and there's 5 members, so if there would be some way, I know Darlene had mentioned the liaison, in some way where you could work together and not be so tied to your area of the map and tied to your school. So I just don't want there to be a map that naturally divides the board based on the schools that they're representing. So I think it's important for all of you to be unified and to work together for the entire district and not just for the schools that they're representing. So that's just my concern. Okay. Thank you.
Next is Amy, and no last name.
Good evening. My name is Amy Buttman. I have 3 kids in PUSD. I have a middle schooler and 2 elementary schools. I've sat on the PTA. I think this is going to be, it's going to be like my 7th year. I think this is my 7th year. As a voter, my concern is a little more of the immediate and less long-term. And that is, as a voter, I want to take into consideration, or for you to take into consideration, how this is going to affect re-election opportunities of the board members once the maps are established. I want other voters to be able to re-elect current members. And very similar to what Lisa said, is that my concern is that depending on how the maps are defined, that we could lose a significant amount of our current elected board members. And I think that would be a shame. Thank you.
The last speaker to turn in a card is Kelly Logan and Chris Hizal.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kelly Logan, the president of the Poway Federation of Teachers.
And I'm Chris Zizal, a director for the Poway Federation of Teachers and Poway resident.
And we're here to give our input on the district mapping. We feel the new district map areas should allow PUSD voters the option to retain current board members. And the reasons for this are many.
Our first reason, we must maintain capacity on the Poway Unified School Board. Recently, there have been large changes in our district office personnel, and we need board members with knowledge of our history and our processes. We need stability.
Reason number 2, voters should have the opportunity to re-elect a board member they support. If a board member who is up for re-election in 2018 is placed in the same district as a board member who holds a seat in 2020, the candidate up for re-election in 2018 loses their ability to run for office in the year they were supposed to. A current board member's ability to run for re-election should not be eliminated simply because of this process.
Reason 3, the wishes of voters should be honored. Voters selected 2 current board members whose term is not up until 2020. If these 2 board members are placed in the same district, they would have to run against each other for re-election in 2018, 2 years earlier than their term was scheduled to end. The decisions made by voters in 2016 should be valued and should not be usurped by the redistricting process.
In summary, we feel we need to maintain capacity and stability on the school board, give voters the opportunity to re-elect their current members if they wish, and honor the decisions voters made in the prior election. These are all the reasons to make sure the new district map areas allow PUSD voters the option to retain their current board members. Thank you.
Thank you.
And they were the last speakers.
Thank you all very much. The public hearing is now closed at 7:05. And the final public hearing on draft maps will take place Thursday, November 9th, 2017 at our regular board meeting again. So now is the time for the board to ask any questions and then provide some direction that we want to give. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Phelps again and Dr. Johnson to facilitate that so everyone can participate. Thanks.
As Dr. Johnson mentioned, it can help move the process along if we can narrow the maps down, and if we're prepared to do so tonight, we'd like to first give board members opportunities to ask questions and have discussion, and Dr. Johnson is at the podium.
I had just a couple of comments. One is it's with regard to creating a community, a natural community, natural boundaries, and compactness. The maps that go end to end fail on that score. And especially Mr. Johnson, you had mentioned about board members' outreach, canvassing, talking to their constituents. There were the maps, the several maps that went from end to end would really make that awkward and difficult. And I think I'd like to just address the concern of community members with regard to sort of the territorial nature of trustees. I see this in more of a positive way of the board being able to sort of share the wealth, share the responsibilities, and that we each have the opportunity to do the kind of outreach that we couldn't do before when there were 5 of us and it wasn't clear, who should do what work where. And this may, if we have a mandate or an agreement to go out and educate our community on certain topics, we can each do it in our area. And so in a way, it sort of, it shares the workload. So I see something positive with regard to that. And as the community knows who comes and attends our board meetings, the regular board meetings really are its staff does the lion's share of the work and recommends to us certain courses of action. And it's at this level, very little of it has to do with a particular school, whether it's at the elementary or secondary level, let alone a geographical area. So I don't think that's a huge concern that somehow this will create some sort of rivalry and create problems and loggerheads at the board level. And then the only interesting thing of note, lastly, is just that there were a couple of community members who mentioned preserving incumbent seats. And on this chart of note is that the only two gerrymandered districts that preserve all 5 incumbent seats were the only ones that got 0 likes and at least 1 dislike. And so I guess what I would say about the gerrymandering is it's counter to the notion of creating the natural community. And interestingly enough, it happens to be the subject of a current United States Supreme Court case in which bipartisan groups submitted amicus briefs stating that gerrymandering districts for the sole purpose of protecting incumbent seats was toxic and corrosive to democracy. So, food for thought.
All right, does anyone have any questions for Dr. Johnson? 'Cause if not, we've got 4 maps, I guess 3, because we're going to eliminate the ones that were submitted late or posted late. Has suggested 3 maps then to be our focus maps to take forward to the next hearing. Do we want to make a motion to approve that suggested group of maps, or do we want to amend the suggested list? We can have discussion on that at this point, and I'll open that up. Again, as a reminder, that was 111, 112, and 113. 111, 112, and 113 were the suggested focus maps. I'm looking at the slide on page number 6.
Can we put the maps back up on the screen? Thank you. Well, while you're thinking about that too, I did want to answer one question. Ms. Dunn had raised the question of wanting to know where the board members are, because some people also don't know. In that interactive map, it's actually there. If you scroll down the list of layers that you can turn on and off, one of them is it's trustee blocks, because it's not a star on your house. It highlights the census block where each board member lives. So there's no secret to this. Anyone can look at that. So it's free for people to look at where anyone is. Not that it's hard to find out where you live, I'm sure, but but yes.
I like 106. I think that I'd rather have that one than 111. 111 has, as I mentioned, 2 areas that go from end to end. We're talking from Mira Mesa to Escondido, and then 1 district that almost goes from end to end, from south to north. Um, 106 I like because Rancho Bernardo has its own district, and North and South Poway are divided along a fairly natural boundary based on their demographics. And I like also, tied to that are South Poway or Sabre Springs and Carmel Mountain. Sabre Springs and Carmel Mountain being together is a good grouping.
I just wanted to bring up a comment that came up last month. I know there was a speaker that talked about looking at households with their child age in them. And I think that might have been some of the concern around breaking up some of the communities, is we don't want all of our we want to have even age populations in our district as well. And that might be very valuable to our school district as we potentially looking at raising revenues to deal with our facilities issues. So I think that might have been why some of these other maps are the way they are. And I think north-south, regardless, it's going to be the same amount of coverage we're going to have to do door knocking on, right? It's the same number of households that we're covering, regardless. It's the same number of precincts we would have to walk,
Right, just
essentially.
a greater territory. You're also creating cross sections. If you're creating 5 cross sections of the district, then you're not changing anything with regard to how we represent the district.
I don't think we're required to change anything about how we represent the district. We're required certainly to allow voters an opportunity to elect the board member they like. I wanted to touch on something you said before about if each board member is going to have just one school and there's no crossover there, you're assuming that all board members are going to equally share the load and do what they're supposed to do for their one school. And if even one board member doesn't do that, that community really has no recourse and no interest from the other board members for 4 years until they can elect another board member who will do what they're supposed to do for that community. If there's crossover of 2 or 3 touching the boundaries of that school, they have a lot of board members who are interested in their school. And as a unified district, that to me makes a lot of sense to support maps that will do that.
Just to clarify, I wasn't proposing that one board member represent each high school. I was just talking broadly about the changing from an at-large to trustee areas, because that was expressed as a concern that community members might be disjointed and territorial in general, not pertaining to schools per se.
I wanted to echo Member Beatty's comment about the vertical and horizontal bifurcation of the district. I don't think it's reasonable to a member, much less to the electorate, that you have a district that spans from the northern border to the southern or from the eastern to the western. I'm just not comfortable with that kind of a setup. As regards maps in particular, I liked 109. I thought it was good. It does keep Rancho Bernardo together. Both halves of the freeway wind up in the same district. And it does also put Sabre Springs, Carmel Mountain, and South Poway into one district. I don't know if anybody out there was ambitious and tried to draw a district that just had the city of Poway in it. I guess that would probably be too large. But I think that's sort of where you start, and you pare down from there as the goal. I have some other sort of observations and philosophies. I don't know if this is the right time to share them, but I'll go ahead. I'm personally, I'll make the statement that I'm fine putting 4 board members in one district. If that turns out to be the most efficient use of the demographics and the maps, that's fine. I can live with that. I think there's ways that you could reduce that somewhat, but I think there are, a couple of considerations that probably can't be allocated. I mean, you could make an argument, for example, that TJ and I should be in different districts because we're separated by a major thoroughfare, Black Mountain Road. I'm starting from the premise that all 4 of us are in one district, and somebody didn't want that. How would they go about making that not happen? You could make the argument that Darsh and Michelle aren't separated from TJ and I because we're bifurcated by both Carmel Mountain Road and SR 56. In looking at these maps for a long time, I can't find any plausible arrangement that separates Michelle and Darsh. We're all very close to each other. They live about a mile from each other. There's no major thoroughfare separating them. I couldn't come up with a logical rationale for separating that. I'm just putting it out there so everybody knows where I'm coming from. I'm not trying to keep my own ox from being gored. I'm fine, like I said, if you put all 4 of us in one district and we go from there. But in terms of the way the maps are laid out, Penasquitos is sort of the problematic part of it. The rest of it's pretty easy to deal with. And I just want to let everybody know that that's where I'm coming from.
Dr. Johnson, can you just briefly let the board know why you are recommending the specific ones with the stars?
Well, it's a tough choice. And it's not like there's anything wrong with the others that disqualify them. It was mainly looking at which maps would, to some degree, compactness, to some degree, make sure that there was, either if it was a map that was a group that was trying to put each high school roughly in one area, the best, they would do that the best, or if it was a map that was trying to blend multiple trustees into each area, it would do that the best. And also definitely looking at, okay, if these maps are roughly the same, well then everything else being equal, let's avoid pairing board members so that the voters get to decide who earned re-election, all other things being equal. Population deviations are often a big consideration in that. We'd often go with a smaller deviation, but given the fact that the population deviation numbers we have now are 7 years old, we just need to be legal on that. A map that the numbers say is 1% off could be even more off than a map that the numbers say is 6% off, given what's happened over the last 7 years. So that's not something I looked at and weighed in very much. But it was looking at which achieve the goals of that group that the submitters seem to express for that group the best. And then if they're all relatively the same, well, let's let the voters have the most say on for the board as possible.
So the goal of tonight is to try to narrow down the maps down to, what, 3 or 4?
Yeah, given the point that we have 4 maps coming in for next meeting consideration for the first time, it's probably 3 would probably be better if the board's comfortable making that decision.
So since Dr. Johnson kind of grouped them, do we want to take each box or each slide to determine which ones the board would like to take and move forward to the next meeting? I think that's probably the easiest to start narrowing them down. Would you agree, Dr. Johnson? Or?
Yes, and we can just go through the group and see if you're comfortable with the suggested one of that, or if the board wants us to change that.
So, Dr. Phelps, you're suggesting that we take one map from each box, so to speak?
And to clarify, just because we picked that map, that's not the exact map that we have to
That's
move.
correct.
We can take that map and then make modifications to
Correct.
it.
We're
Okay.
just trying to narrow it down for the
The
next
ideas,
meeting.
concepts.
Right, so that when people give input at the next meeting, they can have specific input to whatever the specific map, so that we're not looking at 18 maps.
And for the public, the line drawing tool remains available if they want to take one of the maps that you choose to focus and play with what's possible to fine tune it. It's still there for them to do that.
Would it be possible that the maps that we end up narrowing down to, you put that data up for us to share so we can work off of those exact maps instead of having to recreate them?
Yes, we can do that.
Can we do that?
So if you go, when you go into the tool, if you go to new map, we'll make sure that whichever maps you
Whatever
choose,
ones
they
we
show
narrow
up
down
as
to.
templates.
Thank you. That'll help.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can start with the central area C1.
Yeah, and
have that on your screens in front of you, and
really C1 and C2 are one group. There's just a lot of maps that can fit on one slide very
so
well.
C1 and 2.
Initially, you didn't recommend any from this group. Is there a reason for that?
No,
you
sorry.
put them together.
Click one
I
more
got
time.
it.
Yeah, so 112 would be our suggestion. Now this group, yeah.
112. Wait, for which?
And I would note, just since a lot of the public mentioned the idea of avoiding it, 112 is one of the only 2 maps in the whole group that does leave each board member in a separate area. 114 is the other one.
What I did notice with 112 is it's still kind of chunked out into communities, which we know where the growth is. There's a lot in D, there's a lot in A, there's some in C. So all of those boundaries are going to change in another couple years. I mean, we know they're already. I clicked on a lot of those precinct areas, and it showed 0 population, where I know there are hundreds of homes right now with people going to school. So I know that those precincts that show 0 are already off.
The problem with 112 is just, as I mentioned before, going from Scripps Ranch to Rancho Bernardo. That's a heck of a geographic area to cover.
I think the thing to note about B there, though, is that there's no population on the far east. That's almost no people. That's why that district is enormous. In almost every map, that far east district is huge because it's such light population. It's very rural.
Well, that southern border of Scripps Ranch, that's enormous. Stonebridge Estates. It's like going 4 miles back there along the road of developments. Right. And then, so that goes from Stonebridge there off of Pomerado in Scripps Ranch, and then it goes north to the border of Escondido and going westward into Rancho Bernardo.
So if we look at the first slide, 101, 102, and 105, are any of the trustees interested in taking any of those forward? It doesn't sound like it, so can we just cross off those 3? So then if we focus on the next slide, next page, just look at Central Area C2. Do we have any interest in taking forward map 112 by any of the trustees?
Yeah, I am interested in actually moving forward with 112, recognizing it is one of the also recommended maps. And let me just preface by saying I am very appreciative of a number of the commenters that came here this evening. And all the trustees just received copies of emails that were submitted over the past week or two, and I think I've yet to fully digest those, but I am amenable to the idea. I do like the idea of continuity of service on some level, and with the mind that we're going to be doing this again in one election cycle. So if we were to provide an opportunity for continuity of service, as has already been expressed by some members of the community, that doesn't preclude us creating entirely different maps in a single election cycle.
So it sounds like to me there is some interest for the trustees to take forward 112. As I was saying earlier, that it is possible that if the trustees want more than one in that box, we can take forward more than one. So out of 108, 112, and 114, because we can't consider 116 this month, is there any interest with 108 or 114? Doesn't look like it.
I'm interested in 112 as well. I think there are some issues with the little fingers sticking out and things that we can probably work on smoothing out. That I think we can take care of that in revising 112 and looking at a little more palatable looking map. But I'm not opposed with moving 112 forward, with the caveat that I would like to see some changes to it.
Okay, so are we okay to move to the next group of maps? Okay, so if we look at the next group of maps, Northern Area C, we have maps 106, 107, 109, 111, and we can't consider 117 this month. So out of those 4, is there one particular one that the trustees are interested in moving forward?
I'm sorry, did you recommend any of these?
You recommended 111.
Oh, okay.
And then I think I heard earlier Mr. Sellers expressed 109 and Ms. Beatty expressed 106. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, is anyone interested in bringing 111 forward? Doesn't look like it. Is everyone okay with bringing forward 106? Okay.
I don't like 106 for the issue with that one being that which map which one? Was it B, area B perhaps? Has a very low number of people in households who are under 18. We don't have a lot of kids out there. I don't think it's a great idea to draw a district with that low of a number of children in the house. We don't have, I think last month we had a speaker express an interest in trying to balance that a little bit, and that area of our community has a lot of 65 plus or 55 plus communities, and I think putting that all together might be a mistake because there are fewer students.
But then wouldn't that be the same for 109?
Yeah.
And 117? Kind of?
Good point.
I'm not sure we're allowed to discriminate against our taxpayers based on whether or not they have children.
It's not discriminating. I'm just
Well, it's one
pointing
man,
out
one
that
vote. So.
They have an interest in our schools if they have children in their home, and I think it makes sense to consider that.
Well, and the same could be said about, we're supposed to be looking at race demographics, right? That's part of the whole process of this. So I
But
think
not too much.
I know. So some of the districts we were able, some of them I noticed had up to 19% Hispanic in a southern region of Poway, which was very impressive considering the overall Hispanic percentage in our district. A lot of the maps were able to give 30% Asian in 2 districts, which I think were part of the goals of this mapping. So we are looking at demographics a little bit.
I guess the only thing I'd add, at a glance, one of the things I don't like about 106 is while I may, when we're finally done with all this, could be convinced on an area that includes up to 2 current trustees, that includes up to 4. And I just don't think that that's a good starting point.
So of the slides 106, 107, 109, and 111, is there one that the trustees would like to move forward on? The one recommended by Dr. Johnson was 111.
And to be honest, if there isn't, it's okay to not have
Yeah,
one.
it's okay to not have one on this slide as well, too.
Well, I still like 109. I think it's geographically sound. I don't know if it has 3 or 4 board members in one district, because I don't know based on the map I'm looking at.
It's 2 and 2.
2 and 2. Okay, that's at least a starting point based on TJ's criterion. I would move that we keep 109 in the group.
Okay.
I'll support 109 for the same reason, because it does, it splits up the board members.
I have a question about, did we look at maps that overlapped SFID and CFD areas? Because I know one of the concerns that's been brought up time and time again in this board is dealing with the CAB issue and our SFID issues. And looking at 109, I think A might be all Melrose. And so you might have a board member that doesn't have a vested interest in dealing with a capital appreciation bond issue.
Do you have Melrose, Charles?
Do I know?
Yeah.
Just to answer the question.
He's in that? Okay.
That was not something that we were considering when we drafted the maps. I don't know what the individuals who drew the maps themselves were considering.
Okay, so it sounds like the trustees are interested in 109 and 112 so far. What about 111? No? Doesn't sound like anyone's interested in that. So are we good to move forward then onto the next page?
I'm sorry, what were we moving forward with?
So far right now, we have trustees that are interested in 112, 109, and then we're going to go to the next slide, Southern Area C.
I would not be opposed to 111.
111?
I mean, we can just keep that on the radar, I guess, as we move
Are the
forward.
trustees okay with that?
I would be opposed to moving more than one from this set forward. I think this is the set that ignores the idea of continuity and stability the most of any of them, and we did have 4 of our 6 speakers tonight and several of the emails talk about continuity and stability, capacity being very important. I don't know that it makes a lot of sense to move forward with more than one of those.
You're right. I'm taking that one back, actually. I just realized that one is one of the worst with regards to going from end to end.
So far we have 112 and 109. So then if we go to Southern Area C, you have maps 113 and 115 to consider. We'll consider 118 next month. So between those two, do trustees have any interest in moving forward on those two? Oh, just 113, I'm sorry. So does any of the trustees have any interest in moving forward with 113 also?
It has the same issue about, that not taking that continuity and stability into account.
So you wanted. Okay, so it doesn't sound like anyone's interested in any of those maps. So right now, Dr. Johnson, it sounds like the board is interested in moving forward in the next month on maps 112 and 109. And then the 4 that we didn't consider, we'll look at those next month as well, and any other that come forward, and any revisions or edits. Right.
What's the best way for us to approach this as board members? We're going to wait and see if there's a map that magically meets all the boxes that we're hoping for. How do you suggest that we proceed at this point? We're going to wait and see if there are 18 more maps next month? How does this work?
It's a tough decision, without a doubt, and it's a tough process. If there are specific changes that you would like to see, you can give us direction now, and we can draw maps that would do that, and publicize them, in the next couple days. People are also free to go online and do their own revisions to the maps if they want. It depends on your own dynamics of where you want to end up and how you want to come to that decision. I hate to not be able to give you much guidance on that front, but it really is kind of which maps make the most sense for your jurisdiction.
I'd love to see an iteration that both addresses an interest in having board member representation for at least one high school and possibly 2, as well as continuity.
Oh, that reminds me, one thing I was going to mention. It's hard to see on the map that I showed, so let me highlight. One of the challenges in drawing these maps with the high schools, let me make this bigger so we can see it better. There we go. Is for one thing, these areas that are, I don't know how you refer to them, choice areas or option areas, are very heavily populated. So they look small, but they're actually lots of people. And then you have a high school that's non-contiguous. So so we can't draw a trustee area to match that. So it is very hard to draw one beyond the population issue. Just the geography; these are very hard to draw.
Not
so
looking for perfect, just a stab.
Yeah, and to your point too, the idea that we have at least 2 trustees. You're going to end up with at least 2 trustees for each high school. It's just a matter of whether one is a focus high school and then your second area, or a blend of multiples.
I have a question too about some of these areas have very jagged little edges, and I'm just wondering if there's any way to smooth those out so they look prettier, because I know a lot of those little jagged things literally have no population. Can you smooth them out and make them look nicer?
This is an issue. We spent a lot of time talking about this at the city. The census draws the census blocks, and they do their counts by that. So we have to follow the blocks, because otherwise our population numbers get thrown off. And the census doesn't like hills, and it doesn't like cul-de-sacs. And as you know, you have a lot of both.
And it doesn't, and it loves little angles.
Yes, and so what it does, and then you get out to your largely unpopulated areas, and what it's using there is actually old USGS pictures and following like dirt roads and stuff in the middle of nowhere. So we are fairly limited in what we can do out there. Let me go to this map because you can see it a little better. Especially when you get out in the west, this is one giant census block here. We ran into this in the city where the hill. What happens with the hill is it becomes one block, and all the houses on every side of the hill are all in one census block. Yeah, and I think it has 2,000 people in it. So even though it's essentially impossible to walk to your neighbor's house over the hill, there's no way for us to separate it without putting the population numbers in question, and that's an absolute. We can't mess with that.
And just a quick aside, that reminds me, a little undo button on your map drawing thing would be great. If you pick one parcel and it selects the whole thing, and then as opposed to having to zero out the whole thing.
Yeah, it is a little obscure. There's a little red X you can click on that says, no, don't do that. But it is not very. One thing for the public that hasn't tried the tool was written in 2009, and it very much feels like it was written in 2009 because most states aren't going through districting right now. So they'll update it for 2021. It'll be a much easier to use tool. The one thing I did want to mention about the fingers and tools on 112, because that's where the the fingers in the more populated areas where usually we can clean them up. The challenge of this is that the challenging goals and trade-offs. It's not very compact, but that's because those fingers are how we're keeping the decision on board members up to the voters. So we can't clean up some of those fingers without throwing that off, unfortunately. So
I'll work on that one.
yes. So that is the challenge. Up here in A and C, where lots of the maps have weird lines, that's the census block, and there's nothing we can do about that, unfortunately. Thankfully, it won't confuse many people because there's no one there, other than the poor registrar. But the registrar is very good at handling these things. So in the areas where there are a lot of people, the blocks are really small and it's very easy to clean them up. When you get out in the rural areas, we have to follow those block lines, and some of them are really wacko.
Okay, so at this point, I think we're wrapping this up. So we're at this point moving forward with 109 and 112, and I guess then we should be inviting tweaks to those two maps as our starting points. If I'm understanding what you said correctly.
Yes.
Okay.
And for the public's notice, in this online tool and on the website, we'll label those two as the focus maps, and then we'll label the other four as the new maps for considering, and they'll appear first in this list. So.
Okay, then at this time, I think we're ready to move on. All right, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, and any members of the public who don't care about the rest of our meeting, we love you. You can go. Thanks. We're on to 4.4. This is going to be an awesome presentation, though, I've heard. So this is the report on the district results from the Spring 2017 California Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium. SBAC, Dr. Robertson.
No pressure. Thank you, Madam
Oh,
President.
none at all, none at all.
Tonight's our pleasure to present our district Smarter Balance Assessment results. As we all know, there have been a couple of delays, so we're pleased to be able to bring this forward tonight. I'd like to bring up Executive Directors Doug Johnson and Todd Casson to provide a brief overview of the data and our actions towards continuing to accelerate the academic growth of our students.
She said that. Doug Johnson. Doug Johnson.
Johnson. That's
True.
true.
I'm not Dr. Johnson, however.
All right. We ready? All right. Thank you, Dr. Robertson. Good evening, Dr. Phelps, Madam President, members of the board, our Poway Unified staff, and members of the public. My name is Todd Casson, and with me tonight is Mr. Doug Johnson, and we are both executive directors in our district's Learning Support Services Division. We would like to thank you for providing us with the opportunity to share our students' results from last spring's Smarter Balance Assessments, which are one part of the California Assessment for Student Performance and Progress System. These assessments are now in their third year, enabling us to follow trends and dig deeper into the data to provide the necessary support structures to meet the needs of all our students.
Working.
There we go.
There we go.
There we go. First, I would ask that we take a quick look back at how our students performed on these assessments in 2016. As you can see, student scores are broken down into one of four performance levels, ranging from standards not met to exceed standards. By combining the number of students who met or exceed standards and rounding to the nearest whole number, we can find the percentage of students meeting the standards of proficiency set by the state of California. For 2016, that number was 76% in English language arts and 68% in mathematics.
Well, as noted above from the 2017 data, we saw a 2% decrease in the number of students performing at the target level in English language arts and a 1% decrease in mathematics. However, we did see a 1% increase in the number of students performing at the exceeding standards in mathematics. This is the third year that our students have been assessed with Smarter Balanced. Students are tested at grades 3 to 8 and 11. More of our students took the mathematics assessment English language learners who have not been in our country for more than 12 months are exempted from the English Language Arts Assessment. The Smarter Balanced Assessment is composed of enhanced multiple choice and performance task items aligned with the features of Norman Webb's depth of knowledge levels: recall, skill and concept, strategic thinking, and extending thinking. This chart displays data over the 3-year span of Smarter Balanced testing. One can note that more of our students are performing at the target levels than in the county and state. The performance at the target levels remain relatively consistent in the state, county, and PUSD. In the area of English language arts, in comparison to the 2016 testing administration, fewer students in our individual student groups performed at their target level than the previous year. Student achievement improved in grades 6 and 11, and grade 3 remained the same in terms of overall number of students meeting the standards. Last year's 5th grade students, as a collective group over a 3-year period, have demonstrated an 8 percentage point increase in the number of students meeting the target. The data shared on this slide is consistent with our overall district performance. However, our Native American population's targeted performance decreased by 6%. We were pleased to see the increase with our students receiving special education services. However, we are continuing to examine our instructional practices with our special designated student groups to move all of our students to the target levels and to close the achievement gap. In breaking down achievement level descriptors in the exam, 14% of our students perform below standard in reading. Yet, in writing and research, our students performed in the near or above standards at 89% and 90% respectively. We have student results to celebrate, as you can see on the slide. However, we are also focused on strategies at sites that help us develop action plans for all students to meet the targeted standards. What are we doing for students who did not meet or exceed standards? Universal screening at 1st grade to identify students who need added support at a very early time in their education through the SIPS, Systematic Instruction in Phonological Awareness, Phonics, and Sight Words program. Our TK through 2nd grade teachers, including special educators, are participating in the PUSD Reading Academy that focuses on the 5 key components of reading instruction. We are currently in year 1 of implementing the new ELA/ELD K2 benchmark literacy adoption that is directly tied to the rigorous California state literacy standards. As a system in all grade levels, we are continuing to deepen our teachers' understanding of the ELA/ELD standards and the instructional shifts needed to teach these standards. We are continuing to enhance our response to intervention system and structure to support the specific educational needs of our students through this multi-tiered approach.
I'm also excited to share the work of our secondary teachers on special assignment, focused on building comprehensive response to intervention plans at the site level that aim to strengthen and provide an alignment of support structures for our students not performing at grade level. As we transition over to our mathematics, you will find a pattern that is similar to the one found with our English language arts scores, showing a slight drop of 1 to 2% in our larger student group. The largest drop came in our Hawaiian Pacific Islander student group at 13%, while our largest gain came in our Native American student group at 9%. We were also pleased to see an improvement from our students receiving special education services. In breaking down the area achievement level descriptors for these assessments, 19% of our students scored below standards in working with concepts and procedures. Yet in the problem solving and in the communicating reasoning areas, our students scored in the near or above standards at 85 and 86% respectively. Overall, we have a great deal to celebrate, with 2 out of every 3 students tested meeting or exceeding the standards set by the state. But as you can see, when there is a drop in the percentage of our student group, those numbers translate as PUSD students.
What are we doing for students who did not meet or exceed standards? Elementary school teachers are continuing to integrate more math performance tasks into their lessons to focus on mathematical reasoning and problem solving.
In middle school, we are in year 4 of the CMP3, an inquiry-based curriculum, and our high schools are entering their 2nd year of an integrated mathematics curriculum. As a former math teacher, I can tell you I love what I see when I get to visit classrooms.
At the September 29th Professional Growth Day for all teachers throughout the district, sites spent time analyzing their individual school site student performance data. From this process, sites developed school-wide goals, grade level, and student subgroup goals for the year. These goals will serve as a catalyst for the work at the sites and will be published in the yearly Single Plan for Student Achievement document that is submitted to the board and displayed on each school's website. In addition, throughout the year, teachers and administrators continue to monitor student progress on a number of assessments that help provide formative instructional information for teachers via scheduled professional learning time. The goal is to continue to build capacity for our professionals on the school site in order to provide optimal learning environments and structures to meet the individual needs of our students.
Although we understand that we still have important work to do in order to meet the needs of all our students, when we look at these results in combination with the multiple measures we use to track student performance and progress, we are pleased with what we see from the students in the Poway Unified School District. Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Not bad. Is that your first one?
The first one.
Well done, gentlemen. Thank you.
very
All
much.
right. I don't know. Well,
Any
I'll
questions?
turn it over for questions.
Yeah, I do have a question. I know you pointed out that there were some slight drops, -1%. And are those statistically significant?
I was going to ask the same thing.
My gut feel tells me that they're probably not. We're probably oscillating right around a top area that's where we're going to be.
I would say statistically not significant, but when you look at the numbers of drops in the students, that's where it is significant.
So we can actually drill down to the individual students now and look at each individual student's learning plan.
Yeah, that was a key part of a couple of those slides. We really wanted to drill down to our students because that's what it's about. So we can look at an aggregate of 72% and 67%, but the work of our schools are at the individual level with their particular specific needs and then what we're doing in terms of our action plans to meet their needs. And we're not satisfied. I mean, obviously the goal is 100%, closing the achievement gaps. That's what we are always about in PUSD.
Good. I have one more question, but I can go
I
after.
have one as well. I'll go first. You have one also?
No, you just go ahead.
Oh,
It's
okay.
fine.
All
I'll
right.
go after.
I was going to ask the same one, but she beat me to it. My other question was, do English language learners or students receiving special education take any modified version of this test? I know they exist. I'm wondering if those are included in these scores or...
Or not.
They're not. So this is only the students who took a standard one, not the modified versions.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Are
That's
the
why
English language learners qualified to take a modified version?
No.
Okay. They can never take that, but the
Correct.
special education students
Yes.
could.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank
Yes.
Yeah. So my second question is, I know that these scores they came out late. How does that hamper your ability to get right in at the beginning of the school year? And is there any, if you know the bigger picture, is anything being done to make sure this doesn't happen again? Was this a one-off thing, or are we going to get them late all the time?
Well, it was a state issue. They had some issues with putting scores into different districts that didn't belong there, and then they had some special education issues as well. But we are able in a school site to access individual student scores pretty quickly after the end of the testing session. So we can start to look at where we are landing. And then we got initial preliminary scores, as you know, before they were re-embargoed once again. And so then we were able to look at those as well. So we had some early initial looking
overall,
at it.
you know at the school site pretty early on
You
how
do.
how your
Yeah.
kids did. So you can pick that up.
But fortunately, we had all the data that we needed prior to the September 29th Professional Growth Day that the sites used to do their analysis and their work. Yes. We can't publicly.
You need to turn on your mic.
We have a
if you want.
preliminary, so that's what helps us. But
Okay.
it's very close.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for your presentation. I think Eric Leahy would be proud.
It was too short for Eric.
I'm sure he's watching.
Yeah. That said, unlike my colleague, I am somewhat concerned about the slight drop in scores, and here's why. The SBAC, this is what, our third or fourth year giving the test. Normally there's just a learning curve in test taking for a new testing model. Just like under the STAR system, we saw our kids' scores generally increase year over year. So I would like to drill down and we'll first ask if you have any thoughts on possible causes. It's hard to analyze that data because we didn't have it broken down to grade level, let alone elementary or secondary level. And so I'm interested in that information, if it was second graders versus eighth graders versus 10th or, what have you. But I do think we need to take that seriously. So do you have any thoughts as far as the causes and which, because a 1%, that's an average overall, so maybe it's a 5% here and below and a 4% above there or something.
Can I jump on that too but just related though, I did hear also my daughter reported to me that the computers went out at her school when they were taking the math portion. Did that happen at a lot of schools? Could that be part of it? And just go back to Ms. Beatty's question though. I did hear that anecdotally though.
Number one, we do drill down into the claims. They call them claims in SBAC. So the reading claim, the writing, the listening, research, and inquiry. So that's an area that we are spending time looking at those particular claims to see what that reveals for us. As we said in our presentation, we were concerned with the 14% of our students in reading that were performing at the lowest level, at the basic, and also in concepts and procedures. We looked at that also as an area to focus on what's happening in those arenas. But we want to look at drilling down into the claims, then moving into what they call the targets that are aligned with the standards, that then are further aligned with the depth of knowledge questions that are part of Smarter Balance. Those 4 areas that I briefly talked about just a moment ago. So that's the work that we have to do at the site level. We can certainly make some grandiose looking aggregate district perspectives, but the sites are looking at their own data, and that is what we're looking to drill down and devise our action plans and goals at the UC and the single plan for student achievement.
I would think we do also look at grade levels year to year, how they're doing, what I talked about earlier, following trends. How well is a grade doing as they're going through? I think Doug talked about our 5th graders moving up 8%. Well, if we're going down, we're dropping in other areas too, so we got to figure out what's going on in those. In regards to the testing setting, you're going to have those malfunctions. I think the first time they tried this 3 years ago, the county system went down. So everybody that was trying to test on the same day was told you can't test today. But the best thing is it's not timed. So does it mess up the testing environment for the kid? Yeah. That's going to be a disruption. But they're still going to be able to go back and finish.
Well, we have new landlines. Yeah. We know that. Yeah. Hopefully that'll do it. Lawn.
And I think Nathan talked about it. Something out there's in orbit's going to get work for us.
There you go. All right. Well, we're going to hope on that one. I do have another question. Is yours related to this? Because mine's on a different topic.
Mine's related to
Okay,
this.
go.
So my other question is do you think that, is there any increase in the number of opt-outs, and does that impact the change in score?
We definitely had that at a couple of school sites. We did, yes. And so we are absolutely looking at that as well, as how we can engage our families into finding importance about what this might say in a multiple measure scheme. We definitely want to look at that as well.
I want to follow up on that just for a second because I know that we've been talking about this at our Cal SSD conference that we go to quarterly, that 11th graders don't want to take this. Did we have 11th graders take it, or are they staying home?
We had our 11th graders took it, and they.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our 11th graders came in force, so I was very proud of our 11th graders across the district.
Okay.
And I just wanted to piggyback on that question. What general grades are opting out? Is it more at the higher levels or the lower levels? So obviously, elementary level, it's the parents making the decision, and the higher level, it's the high schoolers.
We had a couple of elementary schools where that happened this past testing session, and it just became a conversation at the school site and kind of spread through the community. And now we'd like to go back and have conversations about the importance of this assessment.
Ms. Mishra.
Yeah, I
Welcome
just like
to the
say
discussion.
Thank you. As an 11th grader, many students don't want to take the test because I feel like the importance of the test isn't stressed enough, and that everybody knows it's an optional test, and at that point you can't really get 11th graders to make a decision they don't really want to do. So even if they're taking a test, they may not be fully invested in it, or they may be not caring about it. So I feel like that's also part of the problem, that a lot of the 11th graders don't care or understand what the test means. And that's
Hearing
why.
also, it's the same year they take ACT, SAT,
Yeah, it's a stressful
APs.
year. We're taking a lot of different tests, and adding one more right around the end of the school year is difficult.
So back to my unrelated question. Does anyone else? Okay. I want to go back briefly to students receiving special education services. If they took a modified version, do we have the results on those?
We do not as of yet.
No. When do we expect those?
I have not heard from the state. No. Yeah,
It's a pretty significant number of students receiving special education who took the regular test. Is there any conclusions we can draw from that? I feel like there's a lot that you could dig into here, and I don't know if it's all just hypothesis or if it's going to be helpful in any way, but I'm interested in that.
Mm-hmm. We can look further into that and give you some thoughts as well.
Okay.
Yes.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you two gentlemen. A wonderful job for your first time out. Very nice. Let's give them a round of applause. I actually just want to add just one thing about the high school test. Because we don't do 9th and 10th grade and it's only a junior test, we really need to pursue the notion around some formative assessments so that we kind of know whether we're moving on target. So by the time we get a junior score, they're seniors. It's not necessarily reflective of the other students that are moving up because they go 8th to 11th. The other thing is in terms of the importance of the test, there's a lot of discussion around the scores from this counting towards CSUs in terms of courses, not having to take remedial courses, which they're getting rid of anyway. But there is going to be some kind of a link to beyond high school. So you don't have to continue to take more tests moving forward. So that's all in the talks right now, too. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And before we move on to our consent calendar, I do want to take a 5-minute recess. 5 minutes max. Thanks, everybody. right, we're back. This takes us to our consent calendar. Start down at the end. Anybody want to remove anything from the consent calendar? Ms. Mishra.
No, thank you.
Mr. Sellers. Ms. Beatty. No. Dr. Patel. No. And Mr. Zane.
No.
And nothing for me. Well, that's fantastic. We have a consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
On a motion by Mr. Zane, second by Mr. Sellers. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That looked unanimous? Okay, unanimous. Thank you. That takes us out to 6.1. This is approval of Resolution 25-2018, entitled Resolution to Close Other Enterprise Fund, Fund 63, and transfer balances to Child Development Fund, Fund 12. Mr. Little.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. As we've discussed at the last two board meetings, this resolution authorizes the county to close our Fund 63, Other Enterprise Fund, associated with the district's Extended Student Services Program, and to transfer the fund balance of $880,787 to Fund 12, the Child Development Fund, which is a governmental fund, as are all our other funds. All future fiscal activity related to our ESS programs will be accounted for in this fund under two distinct resource codes.
Are there any questions or a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
On a motion by Ms. Beatty and second by Mr. Zane. Any discussion? All right, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thanks for closing this loophole.
Thank you.
Item 6.2, approval of monthly budget revisions. Mr. Little.
Yes, so this is our most current budget revision for the month of September. This will be informed by our year-end close for last year. You'll note on page 1 that in July we adopted a general fund combined budget of $356.8 million of revenues and expenditures of $369.5 million, resulting in an operating deficit of approximately $12.7 million. On page 2, we report out on the changes to the adopted budget given the closing of the books, the most significant of which are, on the revenue side, we added about $2.7 million attributable to projected ADA growth in the current year. Well, more on that later. And then $2 million of restricted carryover on the revenue side. On the expenditure side, as we reported at our last meeting, we added in about $11 million of carryover, both restricted and unrestricted, and we actually reduced our health and welfare costs by about $1.8 million on the budget side based on our renewals for the current year. So the net of all that was a negative $4.6 million, again, mostly carryover, which adds to our operating deficit and brings it to $17.3 million for the year, which on page 3 impacts our general ending fund balance, taking it to $48.2 million.
Thanks very much, and this does call for action. There, all right.
Second.
On a motion by Mr. Sellers, second by Ms. Beatty. Is there any discussion or questions? All right, seeing none, I'm glad we all get our questions answered ahead of time. That really moves this along. Thanks, everyone. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, fantastic.
Thank you.
All right, I missed, oh, no, we're on 6.3, correct? Okay, thank you. I lost my place briefly. 6.3, this is our 2018-19 budget development. Mr. Little, we'll stick with you.
Yes, thank you. This evening, staff would like to provide the board and the community with a high-level overview of the district's projected financial position as we think about our 2018-19 budget development work. As you know, budget development begins in earnest in January of each year with the release of the governor's budget. However, the San Diego County Office of Ed requires that we submit in December with our first interim report a list of preliminary list of actions to be taken to mitigate any projected structural deficit that may jeopardize a positive certification. So this evening we will quickly review our preliminary projections for 18-19 and 19-20 based on our current fiscal assumptions. In essence, we'll provide a snapshot of the 9-page report that you receive with your board packet. And then we'll also briefly comment on the work of the DBAC, the District Budget Advisory Committee, with respect to their recommendations that will come forward in December as well. So I'd like to begin by saying that the finance team has done a lot of work over the last 3 months in terms of refining our budget projections to ensure their accuracy. Of course, things will change as new fiscal data comes out of Sacramento and from others. So looking at our preliminary fiscal assumptions very quickly, the only one we really have any control over is our enrollment. We've been growing historically on average about 0.8% over the past 10 years. And so we're going to continue that trend, and we're projecting a slightly conservative enrollment growth for the next 2 years of 0.5%. In terms of COLA, we take our COLA cues from sort of the experts in the field, School Services of California. Each year they present what they think the COLA is going to be the following year and the subsequent year after that. Traditionally, they're a little on the high side, but most districts take their advice and follow their projections. They're projecting 2.15% COLA next year, 2.35% the following year. This is really just a look at sort of the last time we got a 2% COLA. You can see we haven't received a 2% COLA since the beginning of the Great Recession, or since the end of the Great Recession. So since 2008, 2009, the greatest COLA we've gotten is about 1.57%. So that's just something to keep in mind as we move forward here. And then the other piece of distinction between the two revenue pieces is School Services of California's estimate with respect to the gap rate funding that we'll receive to take us up to the full target next year versus what the Department of Finance, the DOF, projects. You can see the differences in those two projections. And as you know here, we always run two scenarios, one on the school services numbers and one on the Department of Defense numbers. Tonight we're going to show you a third option, which is kind of the mid-range. So that's it for the revenue side. On the cost driver side, the expense side, you can see our PERS contribution rates. Current year, this year we're projecting to spend $7.6 million. You can see how that goes up next year to 8.8 and then to 10. We know that that's one of the biggest cost drivers, as well as STRS. This year we're spending about $23 million on STRS. Next year 26. The following year 29, and it will continue to going up. Trustee Zane and Trustee Patel and I attended a conference last Friday in Sacramento, and there was a presentation done by the Department of Finance who talked about the exciting subject of pension liability. And they basically said that they didn't see any changes with respect to employer contribution rates in the near future, and that we should plan on these increases moving forward. So that's sort of the reality we're left with. Our step and column, $3.5 million for next year, and then at some point we're projecting slightly lower, given sort of the fact that our staff and our faculty are at the higher end of the salary schedule, and we're projecting 5% increases in our health and medical costs year over year. So keep in mind that obviously as per AB 1200, we submit 3 years of multi-year projections to the county. That's how they assess our fiscal health. We just looked at 17-18 in the last agenda item, so I left that off the table, and we're just going to look at these two very quickly. So this is the most conservative scenario. I wouldn't call it the worst case scenario, because theoretically we could have an economic downturn, right? And the revenues numbers would change considerably. But based on our current assumptions, this is the most conservative, given the school services numbers. And long story short, we're going to get down to the bottom red numbers. We're looking at a structural deficit. So what is a structural deficit? It's an ongoing imbalance between revenues and expenditures in a government agency, in our case, that is ongoing and perpetual. And so we're looking at a structural deficit somewhere between the neighborhood of $17 and $18 million each year in this scenario. Least conservative scenario, this would be based on the Department of Finance's assumptions on the revenue side. So you can see their gap rate funding assumptions gain us about $4 to $5 million each year in LCFF revenues. Given that, our structural deficit falls to about $13 to $14 million in each of the fiscal years. So this year we've created a mid-range assumption. This provides obviously a compromise between the two extremes, the school services on one end and the Department of Finance on the other. So we took an average of the LCFF. We also used slightly more conservative COLA assumptions, knowing that we're not going to get a 2% COLA most likely. And so in these scenarios, all else is equal. In these scenarios, we're looking at about a $15 to $16 million deficit moving forward. And again, these are just as-is numbers. Here's our range then. So given those three scenarios, you can see the range of the structural deficit for each fiscal year. And for our purposes, we recommend using the mid-range projections moving forward as we begin our budget development work for next year. So one data point that might prove useful as we consider the impact of our reserves of each scenario is the cost of 1 month's payroll to Poway Unified. So we're projecting that in 2018-2019, 1 month's payroll costs about $29 million, which represents about a 7.7% reserve level. So from a purely cash flow perspective, we certainly would want to maintain at a minimum that amount of money in our fund balance. So let's consider briefly how each scenario impacts our reserve levels, and we're going to not factor in any budget reductions or any revenue enhancements. So these are just based on the structural deficits that we looked at. So in our most conservative scenario, we would experience the $17 to $18 million structural deficit. In the end of next year, we would finish with a projected ending fund balance, and I won't read all of these numbers for every slide, but just give you a feel for how these are set up. We'd end with $31.7 million, but as you know, of that fund balance, we always have a restricted and assigned fund balance of about $6 to $7 million. So really all that's available to use in terms of the reserves is about $25.5 million. So obviously that's considerably less than 1 month's payroll. If you factor that out another year, you can see the reserve levels drop to 4.5% for the total fund balance and 2.3% for the available fund balance. So obviously dangerously low given the most conservative projections. In our best case scenario, we do a little bit better. Right, so we're looking here at about a $12 to $13 million deficit. If we did nothing, we would end next year with a $35.5 million total fund balance, $29 million, so 1 month of payroll available at the end of the year, and then extrapolating that into 1920, we'd have reserve levels at 7.6% and 5.5% for total fund balance and available fund balance respectively. So again, not a great place to land in terms of trying to meet payroll in an ongoing basis. Mid-range projections, this is the $15 to $16 million structural deficit that we feel is more in line with what we probably can expect. And again, the numbers don't change much. We're looking at a $27 million ending fund balance that's available next year and a $10 million available balance the year after. Reserve levels are 5.7 and 3.6. Had we extrapolated one more year, which we thought about doing but didn't really want to alarm anyone, right, we would sort of be in the negative numbers, obviously. So not acting is not an option. So our challenge then is twofold, right? Tactical and strategic. What can we do in the short term to mitigate the structural deficit? We're calling it $15 to $16 million. As we mentioned, immediate action is required, primarily given the compounding effects of ongoing expenditures and ongoing cuts, right? So for every dollar we save in 2018-19, it's worth $2 in 2019-2020. So to wait another year to make significant reductions really is not an option, and the pain just becomes multiplied the second year. The second part is a longer-term consideration, and that's really about how to address and eliminate, right, the structural deficit and maintain our fiscal solvency, shore up our ending fund balance to meet the required state reserve levels, as well as make sure that we're doing our best from a fiscal prudence perspective. Tonight we're just going to focus on the tactical, obviously. So we looked at two potential numbers in terms of budget solutions. I think my predecessor and the finance team under her recommended $8 million of reductions in the current year. I think that's an excellent recommendation. I'm sorry, for 18-19. If we were to realize $8 million of budget solutions, whether those be on the revenue side or the expense side or both, you can see how that would impact our ending fund balance. So this is the same $8 million of cuts each year, right? So we can make cuts next year of $8 million, and that's the same $8 million of cuts in 1920. So we haven't factored in any additional cuts for 1920 in this slide. So those $8 million of budget solutions would get us to reserve levels 2 years out of 11.4 and 9.2%. And I think, you know, a 10% reserve level is about the minimum that we want to consider given sort of where we are economically speaking and where the state is fiscally speaking as well, and what we know that payroll takes for a month. If we were to only achieve $7 million of budget solutions in 18-19, this is just to show you how those numbers would change slightly. So similar projected ending fund balance next year, and the reserve levels would go from about 11 and 9 to about 10 and 8.5. So long story short, I think that we should be focusing on somewhere between $7 and $8 million of budget solutions for next year. The work of the DBAC has begun, and they've been meeting semi-monthly since August. The committee, I think, feels comfortable that they can find somewhere between $2.5 and $3.5 million of solutions. So assuming that they can achieve that, then the remainder would need to be solutions that would probably require, obviously, negotiations with our bargaining units. But that's sort of where we see ourselves landing as we think about the recommendations that we'll bring back to this to the superintendent in November and then to this board in December from DBAC. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Can you just repeat the last thing you said there, that the DBAC committee thinks you can find $2 to $3 million?
Yes, so one of the charges that we gave the DBAC is they couldn't touch any of the negotiable items, so they can only look at the non-negotiable piece of the pie. So they feel that they can come up with $2.5 to $3.5 million of solutions. So that leaves about, $4 to $5 million of other solutions that we'll have to consider.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Associate Superintendent Little, for the very comprehensive presentation. On page 1 of note, the employee retirement plans, that liability is about roughly 10% of our total general fund budget, and the health, welfare, and medical costs is also about 10%. So combined, they're about 20% of the pie. A question I had is, then it's listed as employee benefits is subsequently listed at $98 million. So what else goes into that? You've got about 70.
I'm sorry, where are you referring?
So page 1, you have PERS and STIRS employee contributions, and you roughly add those up, say it's $35 million. And then your health and welfare is
on
about
the slide,
$35 million.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the page 1 of 9 of the report. Let me go back.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm looking at my paper copy here.
This one?
So that would be page 2. Page 2.
Thank you. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, so I'm sorry. So about $34 million. $35 million is just PERS and STIRS. The remainder of the $98 million is all of the statutory costs. So that would be Medicare, SUI, et cetera, as well as all the health and welfare, the medical costs.
So the health and welfare and the retirement benefits, it's roughly $70 million, and then there's another $28 million that's Medicare, and then what else?
No, so the 28, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. $35 million is the medical costs. right? And then you have another $35 million that is PERS and STIRS. So that's 70. And then if the total's 98, then the other 28 is all the statutory taxes, right? So the Medicare taxes, the state
Workers'
unemployment insurance, the workman's comp, all of that is part of that 3,000s, the object code.
And that all totals roughly 28
28 million, correct.
Or 20, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Little? I just thought that was an excellent presentation.
Oh,
I'm
thank you.
not necessarily happy with the numbers, but excellent presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that does not require action from the board, so we will move it right along, if I can find the end. 6.4, this is our enrollment report, number 1 for 2017-2018. Mr. Little.
Yes, and this is some good news to report. So this is for month 1, ending September 15, 2017, and as you can see, the report shows modest growth across all of our site levels, elementary school, middle school, and high school, and a net gain of 619 students over month 1 of last year. So that's about a 1.6% increase over last year's enrollment numbers. And so while we anticipate this dropping slightly moving forward, we do expect that we'll have a good 1% growth perhaps in the current fiscal year, which will help our enrollment numbers and our revenues.
More ADA. Any questions for Mr. Little? All right. Well, we're done with your section. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank
That
you.
takes us to the 7.0s. Dr. Robertson, we have 7.1, ratification of student discipline.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight we bring forward one case for the board's action.
And with that, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
On a motion by Mr. Zane, second by Dr. Patel. Any discussion on this? All right, seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. 7.2, ratification of enforced expulsion. Dr. Robertson.
And thank you, Madam President. Tonight we bring forward for the board's action the ratification of this case on an enforced expulsion.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, on a motion by Mr. Zane, second by Dr. Patel. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. 7.3, proposed adoption of high school supplemental textbooks, first reading. Dr. Robertson.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight we bring forward as a first reading a supplemental textbook for AP French, and this is a first reading, and if you'd like to review the books, they are sitting right on the counter there.
Are there any questions on this item?
Motion to approve.
No, we don't have to approve it. It's a first
I knew
reading.
that. We.
Very nice. Okay, thanks very much. The 8.0s. All right. 8.1 is a public hearing and approval of governing board appointee to the Personnel Commission. Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, Madam President. The Board of Trustees in the September board meeting recommended the reappointment of Ms. Margaret Wyatt as one of our personnel commissioners. The next 2 steps in that process is this evening to hold and conduct a public hearing comment on the intended appointee before making an official appointment and recommendation to reappoint her to another 3-year term. The Board of Trustees is first asked to open a public hearing for public comment and then to recommend the reappointment.
All right, thank you very much. Then at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing at 8:34. I have to put on some glasses to even see that, but 8:34 it looks like to me. Are there any speakers on this item? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close this public hearing at 8:34 as well. And that takes us to the action item. You'd like me to just ask for the motion at this time? Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
Yes, I would like to move that we approve this and to apologize for Ms. Wyatt's absence. She was planning on being here tonight in case there were any issues with the public, but she had an HR emergency at the city. So she is not here, but certainly hopes to be reappointed. And I move that we do that.
All right. on a motion by Mr. Sellers. Is there a second? Second by Dr. Patel. And I would say for me, that's one of the reasons I think she's a great commissioner is because of the work she's already been doing with the city. Are there any other questions or discussion? All right, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. 8.2, approval of resolution number 23-2018, entitled Resolution Regarding the Elimination or Reduction in Hours of the Classified Positions as Contained in Exhibit A, corresponding layoff and of classified employees. Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, Madam President. This evening, the board is asked to consider the approval of a resolution to eliminate a vacant position, an administrative assistant 2 position in our communications department. At the September board meeting, the board approved a new position titled the Communications Specialist position, which provides the opportunity to conduct a broader range of responsibilities to support the services and the operations of our district and the communications department. This evening, the board would approve the resolution to eliminate the vacant position of the Administrative 2 position. The position is vacant. There is no impact on the incumbent. The net fiscal impact to the district with last month's approval of the Communication Specialist position would be a net effect of $8,196.
Thank you. Is there a motion or any questions? We can go either way on that. And a motion by Mr. Sellers?
Second.
Second by Dr. Patel. Any discussion on this item? All right, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That. Oops, sorry, lost my mic there. This takes us to item 10.1. This is adoption of California School Board Association Board Policies, Section 1000 through 1700, Community Relations. Dr. Phelps, this is yours.
Board Policy 1000 to 1700 have been revised by staff and are now ready for adoption by the board. Board member feedback has been incorporated into these policies and they are presented tonight for approval. Upon approval, they will be sent to CSBA for finalization. And at the November 16, 2015 board meeting, the board had voted to update the PUSD board policies and procedures and align them with the California School Boards Association. In September 2016, a 3-day policy development workshop led by CSBA consultants was conducted with board members and staff to begin the process of updating PUSD board policies. Tonight we ask the adoption of the CSB board policies at that 1000 to 1700 to replace the current corresponding PUSD board policies.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions at this time? Mr. Zane.
Just 2 quick things. One, good work by staff in cleaning up some of the things I noticed when this came forward in August, because I had actually made some markups to my board materials from August and compared it against what's here tonight. And so some of the questions I had from August are no longer there, save one. And I'm just curious, just out of curiosity, it's on board policy 1240B under volunteer assistance. And I'm just curious, it says here that upon the adoption of the resolution by the board, volunteers shall be entitled to workers' compensation benefits for any injury sustained while engaged in the performance of service for the district. Is that something routine? Do we pass resolutions to cover volunteers for potential workman's comp claims, or is that part of what I had seen previously in a previous budget where I think the district pays something like a $4.4 million a year premium for workman's comp? Is that part of that?
Oh my goodness, I'm breaking things. I can respond that it's very common for districts to cover volunteers from a workman's comp perspective. I'm not sure the number, the $4.5 million number that you're referring to, but I can check into that and see if that's related.
Have we actually ever had any workman comp claims by volunteers at the district before?
I'd have to check. I don't know for a fact.
I mean, I know you've been here for all of 6 months. You should know the whole history of the district by now. So.
We'll check and let you know.
Motion to approve.
Actually, I had a couple of questions.
Okay, we can move
Motion
to...
in a second, or should we? Okay.
Okay, is there a second then? We have a motion by Mr. Zane.
I'm going to wait because
Okay, I'll second that then. Okay, so a motion by Mr. Zane, second by O'Connor Ratcliffe. Okay, now we'll go to your questions, Ms. Beatty.
Okay, let's see. So, Board Policy 1312.2A, Community Relations Complaints Concerning Instructional Materials. Maybe I missed it. It's talking about first meeting of the committee.
I'm sorry, which one?
So it'd be the pages aren't numbered, so it's just board. The reference is BP in the top. BP 1312.2A. It says community relations complaints concerning instructional materials, challenges of educational issues. The procedure for the first meeting of the committee is as follows. So I was looking for where the committee was established, if there is to be a committee.
Right here.
Let's see. Instructional material starts on the page before. So it just refers to complaint procedures, and then it references a committee.
So, Ms. Beatty, what we typically do is if there is a complaint about instructional materials, and I'll just give an example of complaints, say a library book that is sitting in one of our libraries, they'll report it to us, and we will convene a group of people to take a look at that and then make a recommendation from there with the textbook. I don't know about instructional challenges of materials. If we have complaints, we will work with that. What we typically do before we even get to that point with instructional materials is we have a committee that works on our textbooks anyways that includes parents. And remember, we also have 2 readings with our textbooks before they actually get adopted when we come here. So any challenges that come up can come up then also.
So do we want to keep this in or take it out? It talks about this formation of a committee and electing a chairperson. Number 1, the procedure for the first meeting of the committee is as follows. I mean, is this our established protocol? I'm just trying to understand if this belongs.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from because there's no mention of committee, establishing a committee or what that committee would do before that.
There's no description of the committee, right?
Yeah, there's a gap there.
And we must have missed it last time because I don't remember.
That reads oddly.
Maybe, we could just take that one. Just approve with the amendment of removing that one if that's not our process. Unless that's statutory, I don't know.
I don't see a reference.
I doubt it.
And there does seem to be a gap there where it doesn't just,
Do we want to pull all of 13.12.2? I mean 1312.2? Pull the whole thing with A, B, C, and D? And E.
I'll restate a motion to approve with the exception of board policy number 1312.2A through E.
Okay, I'll second that, and we need to vote on that amendment before we move to the full vote. So this is just on a vote to amend the initial motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the initial motion has been amended. Would you like to restate now the motion on the floor now?
Move to approve the policies as presented with the exception of board policy number 1312.2A through E.
Okay, and I will second that one. So that's a motion by Mr. Zane, second by O'Connor Ratcliffe for the amended portion. Is there any other question or comment on this item before we vote?
I just had one comment, and that is Board Policy 1321. Since this just came up as a recent issue, I thought it was important to elucidate solicitation of funds from and by students. The governing board recognizes that student participation in fundraising activities for the schools and nonprofit, nonpartisan charitable organizations can help develop a sense. Okay, I don't need to read that part. The second paragraph, whether solicitations are made on behalf of the school or on behalf of a charitable organization, students shall not be barred from an event or activity because they did not participate in fundraising. Potential donors, including parents, guardians, and members of the community, should not be unduly pressured to contribute to the school system or charitable organizations. Staff is expected to emphasize the fact that donations are always voluntary. So just wanted to state that one for the record. Thank you.
Mr. Singh.
It's one well noted for the record, and I agree with the sentiment of that wholeheartedly. When I served as chair of the Los Penn Foundation, it was something that we endeavored to be very careful about the ask, so to speak, for resources for the foundation, understanding the legal limitations on what we could expect of parents at the school. So, I would actually add not as a policy, but a good practice anyway, organizations, foundations at the various schools within the district, it might be a good practice if they were to share their solicitation with the district, the point person at the district, prior to dissemination, just to ensure that it's not crossing that line.
And something that's part and parcel with the fundraisers, I know with my children in the last 16 years, from elementary through secondary, are these pep rallies to sort of gin up excitement, enthusiasm, motivation, and that could run afoul of the spirit of this policy.
Staff does note that, and staff also supports this board policy, and will be sure to get the message to principals to ensure that any programs or fundraising activities that they adhere to board policy 1321.
I had one item that stuck out to me. I don't want to change it at this point. I just want to point out that I can foresee possible issues with 1150.1. This is contests and awards, and this is just asking that all contests and awards submitted to schools should first be directed to learning support services for approval. I can see that becoming overly cumbersome and slow, and that might need to eventually be changed to being directed to the site, the school principals. But I'm absolutely willing to approve it at this time, but I can foresee that being a needless added layer to this. So I just want to make sure we keep an eye on that one. That one bothers me a little, but I'm willing to approve it anyway. And we do have a motion and a second on the floor, so if there's no further discussion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, this passes. This takes us to 11. This is our 11.1 board member reports, and we'll start down at the end. Thank you. You're staying till the bitter end with us here. Ms. Mishra.
Thank you. Good evening. As deadlines approach, our seniors are gearing up to tackle their college applications head-on. This coming Wednesday, October 18th, from 6:30 to 8 p.m., will be our annual PUSD High School College Fair. Parents and students will have the opportunity to meet and speak with over 125 college representatives. Speaking of seniors, all of our high schools have kicked off their annual unofficial senior game, and like many others, I'm excitedly participating. Like I promised you all at my first board meeting in August, one of my many goals is to increase the involvement and encouragement of girls in the field of science, technology, engineering, and math. And I'm excited to say that we have established a Society of Women Engineers chapter at Rancho Bernardo High School, and we're hoping to establish several other chapters at other schools this year. A few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to sit and meet with Superintendent Phelps and the rest of the Superintendent's Student Advisory Committee. We have an extremely dynamic group filled with creative ideas of how we can improve our school district, and I'm very excited to be working with everyone. Almost all the high schools have had their homecoming dances, with themes ranging from Around the World at Del Norte to Dancing Through the Decades at Poway. Following suit after Westview, several other schools are on their way to installing hydro stations on their campuses, like Mount Carmel and Rancho Bernardo High School. I'm very glad to see Ella's efforts from last year progressing and moving forward in this current year. Although I was not able to attend, the San Diego Salute to Teachers was on September 16th, and it was a wonderful event honoring our teachers, Mr. Langsberger from Del Norte, Miss Michelina from Rancho Bernardo, and Mr. Opstad from Westview. In the coming weeks, there will be various band tournaments from Rancho Bernardo, Mount Carmel, Westview, Poway, and Del Norte, and I'm sure we can expect great performances and shows from all the participating high schools. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you all next month.
I don't have a formal report other than I want to congratulate Dr. Robertson on the marriage of her daughter, and I want to give my condolences on the passing of your mother. Hopefully your mother was able to see the marriage of your daughter, and that's wonderful. You sent me a very nice card on the passing of my stepfather, which I very much appreciated, and I understand what you're going through, and I wish you well and the support of your family and your PUSD family as well.
I just briefly want to mention that I attended the Palomar Council meeting this month and was joined by our new Associate Superintendent of, I'm glad I can see her sign there because I can never get that, Technology and Innovation. Not your name, the title. I don't know whether to say Education Technology or IT or Technology and Innovation, Jennifer Burks, and our new Director of Technology and Innovation, Lana Nguyen, and they gave a great presentation and introduction. It was great to hear your bio. And importantly, there was a nice interchange between the PTA, or PTA presidents, representing most of our schools, and their department with regard to some issues of concern and how we can, serve our parent community better. So that was neat. And I know I didn't see the president, Shirley Williams, the president here this evening, but she did say she was going to make a point to come to our meetings every month, and so I think that's a good way to keep that, the liaison. I had extended the invitation if she ever wanted to report on Palomar Council meetings. The board would love to hear about all of their activities. And Joe McEachran from PFT gave a presentation on our ADA, and although it's high comparatively compared to most other districts, if there's room for improvement, there's always room for improvement. We can realize some increase in revenue since we get paid for whoever shows up on a particular day. And he made some handy charts, so I just thought I'd bring this because I know Board Member Patel has been very interested in the ADA issue. So that's for you. Thank you.
So I did prepare a formal report because I'm just that kind of person. Good evening. It's hard to believe that it's already halfway through October, and since we last met, like you guys, I've been very busy with school district related activities. Here's what I've been up to. I'm continuing to make progress on my goal of visiting every school site. In the past month, I was able to schedule visits with Principal Bob Rodrigo at Sundance Elementary and Principal Ricardo Cesenia at Valley Elementary School. Both visits provided some insight on how our elementary schools are working to meet the needs of their students at every level. At Sundance, I was impressed with the maker space that doubles as a science lab. And at Valley, I was able to see firsthand the power of bilingual education and how it works at a primary grade level. I'm confident that the district will be able to successfully implement more dual language programs in the coming years, and I'm excited about that opportunity. I sincerely appreciate the time that principals and staff at these school sites have been taking out during their very busy schedules, and look forward to visiting more schools. Ms. Mishra at the end mentioned the Cox Salute to Teachers. I was able to attend that with many of our fellow members up here. And once again, I'd like to reiterate my congratulations to those teachers who made it. And an extra special congratulations to Mark Landsberger, who's now moved on to the next level. It's very exciting to have another student from our district as a finalist at the state level. I also attended, along with Associate Superintendent Ron Little and Board Member Zane, the California Suburban School Districts meeting in Sacramento. We were briefed on the status of local or recent California legislation moving through committees, Assembly and Senate. We discussed the financial impacts of AB 670 proposed by Thurman or supported by Thurman, which removes the exemption of part-time playground positions from classified service, which we thought had an interesting financial impact, as well as AB 621 from Boca Negra, which discussed summer furloughs for employees who do not receive 12-month salaries. These are all interesting bills that are going through that would impact our budgets. We also covered the passage of SB 751 by Hill, which increases the reserve cap, which is good news. Not that we have much of a reserve right now. And SB 328 by Portantino, which dealt with the mandatory school start time. And that was held due to lack of support. I was asked to bring back to the board for consideration signing a letter initiated by AXA that requests Governor Brown to take appropriate action to fulfill voters' mandate and sell more than the 4% of bonds required to raise funds promised from the passage of Prop 51. Our school district is currently waiting on funds promised from the building of Design 39, several million in fact, and I respectfully request that the board consider this letter perhaps at the next board meeting. I look forward, and I'm very excited to be at Westview High School tomorrow for homecoming activities, including speed painting, which I've heard amazing things about, as well as having the honor of being a homecoming float to judge. I have received tips from some community members of how I'm supposed to do this, so I think I'll be an okay judge. So many exciting things are happening right around the corner. I'm looking forward to hearing more. Thanks for listening, and that's all from me.
As long as the seniors win, is that your tip? I'm not sure. All right, Mr. Zane.
I'm so tempted to take more than 5 minutes, only to wreck Superintendent Kim Phelps' prediction that we'd finish by 9. But
I'll help.
I'll go a little bit. I'll go a little bit faster. First, let me echo Board Member Sellers' congratulations to Superintendent Robertson, and condolences as well. There's certainly been a lot that's happened over the past month. Just a different. I think every one of us comes to this meeting tonight with a different perspective. Things that have happened in Las Vegas and the fires in Northern California. Just hopefully everybody's taken an opportunity to take some reflection in terms of and think about what's really important, and just take a different approach to things. I also had the pleasure of attending the Salute to Teachers since the last meeting, and the Cal SSD function in Sacramento with Associate Superintendent Little and Dr. Patel. This was quite a heavy agenda for this month's board meeting, or this evening's board meeting, and since we had just wrapped up that event on Friday, there's still a big folder of bills that they gave us to review. It's just a bill factory up in Sacramento. It's just unbelievable the amount of bills to review that we haven't even gotten to them all yet, and we've actually put in a request to get some of the information electronically so we can put it out there and distribute it so you can all take a look at that yourselves as well. And today I had the privilege to attend the Red Ribbon Luncheon in Mission Valley with Mr. Clerk and others from Poway Unified and the Safety, Wellness, and Advocacy Coalition. Very worthwhile luncheon talking about the importance of drug prevention and fighting drug abuse, et cetera, with District Attorney Summer Steffen, San Diego County Sheriff Bill Gore, and San Diego Police Chief Shelley Zimmerman. So that's all I have in my report this evening. Thank you very much.
Speaking of the red ribbons, we're all wearing these. It'll be celebrated throughout PUSD over the next couple weeks with a variety of activities to educate and encourage our students to adopt a healthy lifestyle. And I want to acknowledge the generous donation from one of our longtime district partners, Aurora Hospital, of 17,000 of these red ribbons that our elementary students will be wearing. These ones that we're all wearing tonight. Our 6th through 12th graders received or will be receiving some nifty red bracelets that were purchased from our 2015-16 tobacco use prevention grant. So we have a great couple weeks of celebration ahead of us to encourage our students to stay with that healthy lifestyle. I want to talk about a couple of school visits. I was at Park Village a couple weeks ago with Principal Mossgrove. He showed me around campus through several classrooms, and we chatted about everything from special education to their newly painted handball backstops by the Dad's Club there, to some planned maker spaces that they're trying to get done, and their science lab. And we popped in on one of their second step lessons, which I was unaware was happening all over the district, and it was fascinating. I loved it. I'm so glad we're doing this. I was also at Willow Grove for Friday Flag last week with Principal Huff, and got to meet and shake the hands of all the newly elected student council officers there. These are some very proud 4th and 5th graders who are going to do a great job over there. Met their PTA and foundation parent leaders who are selling all of the Willow Grove swag over there. Learned about some of the parent-led character count things that they're doing there. The parents are doing this in every single classroom. So that was really neat. And they have the most amazing science lab going over there. Wow. If you ever have a chance to visit, get in there. That teacher is fabulous, and that room is just they were looking at dead bees that he had fished out of his pool at his home under microscopes to check out all of the structures, in particular the wings. They had some mealworms on one side. They had a human skeleton on another side. They were making helicopters that they were going to put over some fans to see how long they could keep them suspended in the air. I mean, this was sensory overload in there, but it was really amazing. I also want to point out October is one of those months that offers us all an opportunity to educate ourselves in several areas that affect our students. And there are a lot of them. I hesitate to mention any because of the chance I'll leave some out, but this month is Dyslexia Awareness Month, Down Syndrome Awareness Month, ADHD Awareness Month, and National Bullying Prevention Month. So I encourage everyone to do some reading on these topics. I think the more that we all understand about them, the more we can do for our students. And I guess the last thing, I'm looking forward to participating in our district's November 7th meeting to develop a plan to implement our special education recommendations from our FCMAT report. During my school visits and the ones I've scheduled coming up, I've been paying close attention and really trying to focus on current practices in special education on our campuses and reading a lot about LRE best practices in my spare time, our least restrictive environment. And I'm optimistic that as a group of parents and educators and staff and really committed folks, we can develop a plan that's going to include all of the necessary staff development and staff training, appropriate classroom supports to make this work, with the ultimate goal of improved student outcomes. I think we can do it. We're on the right path here. We're taking the right first steps. So I'm optimistic and can't wait. November 7th, let's go. That brings us to 11.2, our superintendent's report.
Okay. October is our second full month of the 2017-2018 school year, and it's been a really busy one. Our student staff and our volunteers have hit the ground running, and I've continued attending staff meetings at all of our school sites to personally welcome Team PUSD to a new and exciting school year, and share our collective vision, as well as have them get to know me a little bit better, as well as listen to their concerns and questions. These intimate face-to-face meetings that I've been having with the staff have been really, really enjoyable for myself personally and rewarding, and being able to have the opportunity to get to know all of our teachers and our employees at their individual school sites. The month of October holds many celebrations and recognitions, including homecomings, Red Ribbon Week, National Custodial Workers Day, National Principals Month, National School Lunch Week, to just name a few, and Bosses Day. I just wanted to take this opportunity to acknowledge how many members of Team PUSD it takes to keep our district running and succeeding. It is so exciting to see so many of our stakeholders engaged in contributing to PUSD. One of those groups is our Superintendent Student Advisory Committee, which Shana is also a part of. This is a diverse group of students from all 6 of our high schools, and we had our first meeting last month, as she had mentioned, and I was so impressed by their passion, their maturity, their willingness to learn. I shared with them the Start With Why video and the book that we are doing as a book study as a management team. We also distributed books for our student leaders as well too. And in our monthly meetings, we'll explore equity and access issues, broaden their understanding of PUSD, and incorporate leadership skill building as they represent all of our students at our high schools. So I want to thank them for bringing the student voice to the table. Our Studio 701 interns are back. Every month, they will be working with our communications director to create excellence in education videos that highlight how PUSD is achieving its mission of college and career readiness throughout the district. This month's piece focuses on PUSD's first ever CTE Expo, which took place last spring. And let's take a moment to watch this piece.
Inside the Petco headquarters, the typical hustle and bustle of employees was replaced with the sound of enthusiastic high school students. During Poway Unified's first ever annual Career and Technical Education Student Expo.
Everything in STEAM, science, technology, the arts, you name it, it is here. It's about imagination. It's about exciting your passions. It's about really problem solving in some real life scenarios.
Helping young minds find their passion has always been a goal for Poway Unified School District, providing them with classes that advance potential career pathways and college readiness.
I thought after high school I would just go to college, study history and become a teacher. But I'm so glad I picked this class because it's definitely changed it to where I thought I wanted history, but now that there's this huge range of sports medicine that just is so interesting to me.
From sports medicine and biomedical science to graphic design and engineering, the district has expanded its career and technical education curriculum in recent years. Local business leaders support the effort.
I think CTE is critically important for the community. Having young people have the opportunity to get career technical education and apply that education, whether it's in their next level of educational pursuits or whether it's in industry and businesses like mine, there's an incredible demand and need.
Not only do students gain technical training, but also develop soft skills for communicating and succeeding as professionals in their future careers.
We learn trust, responsibility, we learn about hard work, and we learn about making sure that when we do things, we do them right. This is one of my favorite classes I've ever taken in high school.
The hard part is to not give them the solution, but to really encourage them to come up with the solution themselves.
The result? College and career ready, and life-ready graduates.
I want to thank Christine Peck, our Director of Communications. I have to say, like all of our district videos, including the music video we did at the beginning of the year, Christine Peck has orchestrated that, coordinated that, and we do it all for free in our district because we utilize the talents of our students within the district. And so, as you can tell, it comes out very professionally done, and it's just so proud of the work that they do, but it really truly is attributed to the leadership that Christine does in her role as our communications director. And if you haven't seen it yet, I want to thank Christine. We've embarked on a new project. She started PUSD News in 60 seconds. If you haven't seen that, it's really an exciting project that we started, and she put it on Twitter, so you should check that out if you haven't seen it. She does a fabulous job in that. That was wonderful. Also, in support of college and career readiness for students, I wanted to remind you of next week's College and Career Fair at Rancho Bernardo High School on Wednesday, October 18th. Over 100 colleges and vendors will be represented, along with helpful workshops on financial aid, trades, military, and more. This event is geared specifically to our high school students and their families due to limited space, but I wanted to thank our volunteers from the Palomar Council and PUSD Foundation for all their hard work in planning this event. Finally, I wanted to recognize some of our students and staff mentioned on the board packet. There are many listed, but I wanted to say special congratulations to Mark Landsberger, who was named one of the San Diego County Teachers of the Year. Megan Power, who was selected as one of U.S. Department of Education School Ambassadors. And we also had 3 PUSD students become the only ones in San Diego County to get selected for the National Honors Ensembles. Congratulations to all, and that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Dr. Phelps. That takes us to 13.0. This is adjourning. Our next regularly scheduled board meeting will be Thursday, November 9th, 2017, 6 p.m. right here. We are adjourned at 9:10. Thanks.